Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles. Chapter 2009, Thunder Axe City activated. When Shifeng walked out of the teleportation hall, he was greeted by the sight of a very wide street with NPC giants walking along it. If players were to visit this city, they would definitely feel very out of place. The buildings in the city were also extremely large. Even the carriages used to travel around the city were much larger than the carriages found in other NPC cities. Moreover, the carriages here were pulled by the much larger and stronger herbivorous earth dragons, instead of horses. Aside from giants, NPCs belonging to other neutral races also lived here, including the extremely rare elves. Although elves looked very similar to half-elf players, the life ratings of the two were as different as heaven and earth. During the ancient era, elves could be said to have been the messengers of gods. They were the beloved children of magical elements, and they could cast spells above their tier effortlessly. However, as the gods in God's domain fell, the elven race also went into decline, the race's population continuously decreasing as the years went by. Players visiting Thunder Axe City for the first time would definitely be very shocked by this scene. Shifeng, however, had long since grown accustomed to it. He immediately hailed an earth dragon carriage and made his way to the city center. As a super large-scale neutral city, Thunder Axe City was extremely large. Even the Black Dragon Empire's capital was only half the size of Thunder Axe City. Hence, traveling through the city took a lot of time. To make matters worse, Thunder Axe City's teleportation hall was located on the outskirts of the city. Players were also prohibited from using their own mounts, teleportation skills, and teleportation tools inside the city. Players could only rely on the carriages pulled by the house-sized earth dragons if they wished to travel through the city quickly. Of course, if players managed to reach the Viscount rank in Thunder Axe City, they would be allowed to ride their own mounts. However, becoming a Viscount in a neutral city like Thunder Axe City was exceedingly difficult. As far as Shifeng knew, even after many players had reached level 200 in his previous life, nobody had succeeded in becoming a Viscount of Thunder Axe City. Meanwhile, while Shifeng was traveling toward Thunder Axe City's central district, a commotion erupted in the Witch's Hill. Did I hear it right? Zero Wing is actually having its members give up on grinding in the Witch's Hill? Zero Wing must not want to continue the pointless fighting. Haven't you seen how powerful those monster players are? Taking care of Tier 2 experts is like child's play for them. Just one monster player can easily annihilate a 6-man party of Tier 2 experts. Not to mention, these monster players generally move around in groups. Didn't Zero Wing manage to repel Miracle's attack in the Black Dragon Empire before? What's it doing now? It's already giving up after fighting for just a short while? I never thought that the day would come when Zero Wing would fall into such a state. Previously, Zero Wing was slaughtering its enemies left and right. Now, it's forced to give up on a precious land like the Witch's Hill. With this, Zero Wing's development in Star Moon Kingdom will definitely lag behind the other large guilds by a significant margin. If this situation persists, Zero Wing might not even remain Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild in the future. That's right. This is a good opportunity for small guilds to rise up using the Witch's Hill. The players operating in the Witch's Hill all found Zero Wing's decision to pull back its forces to be very surprising. They had never imagined that the guild would give up on the Witch's Hill so decisively. Zero Wing was clearly capable of fighting a war of attrition with the monster players, thanks to Zero Wing's city, yet it did not do so. Meanwhile, due to Zero Wing's decision to retreat, many of the small guilds that had been maintaining a low profile in Star Moon Kingdom started trying to join the Starlight Alliance formed by the guilds operating the 2 guild towns in the Witch's Hill. After all, the current situation in the Witch's Hill was already clear for all to see. The Starlight Alliance, which was capable of transforming players into monsters, had the advantage in field battles. As long as Zero Wing's members dared exit Zero Wing's city, they would definitely die. Meanwhile, shortly after Shifeng gave out the command to retreat, the upper echelons of the Starlight Alliance's member guilds gathered at WildhammerTown, a short distance away from the Million Forest, for a meeting. The guilds responsible for leading this meeting was the Purple Thorns Kingdom Sin Realm and the two guilds that established the two guild towns in the Witch's Hill, Knight's Judgment and Warring Empire. Although Knight's Judgment and Warring Empire were only second-rate guilds, the investments of multiple corporations boosted the strength of the two guilds, which could now rival ordinary first-rate guilds. Zero Wing has truly been frightened by our monster army this time. Now, not only are Zero Wing's members not coming out of Zero Wing City, but they're not even operating within its vicinity anymore. I'm sure everyone present knows about the defensive capabilities of Zero Wing City. Currently, we still can't break through the city's defenses. However, we also can't let Zero Wing continue developing the city. Do any of you here have a good suggestion for dealing with this problem? Knight's Judgment's guild leader, Shadowlight Axe, asked as he glanced at the dozen or so guild representatives present. In reality, they were all caught off guard by Zero Wing's decisiveness. This was not the outcome they wished to see at all. From an outsider's point of view, the monster legion their alliance created might seem very powerful, but the public did not know that a large number of lives were necessary to sustain these players' monster forms. Moreover, these lives needed to be willingly offered by players that were level 50 or above. Hence, the guilds could not allow their fight with Zero Wing to drag out. Since Zero Wing is so decisive in abandoning the Witch's Hill, let's think of a way to prevent Zero Wing from giving it up. We'll force Zero Wing to fight us. That's right. We'll make Zero Wing fight even if it doesn't want to. Since Zero Wing is relying on Zero Wing City for its development, we'll make it so that it can't rely on the city at all. We can set up a teleportation seal on Zero Wing City and announce that, so long as Zero Wing refuses to fight us out in the fields, we'll kill every player that comes out of Zero Wing City. We'll kill these players until Zero Wing is willing to come out and do battle. If Zero Wing still refuses to fight us, then nobody will dare to visit Zero Wing City. At that time, let's see how Zero Wing develops using Zero Wing City. This is a good idea. Zero Wing's main source of income right now is Zero Wing City. If Zero Wing City fails, Zero Wing won't get off scot-free either. If Zero Wing doesn't want to see its city fail, it'll definitely have to fight us. That's right. If Zero Wing really refuses to fight, it'll become the laughing stock of the kingdom. I want to see how Zero Wing plans on developing in Star Moon Kingdom then. Everyone present nodded in agreement upon hearing this plan. They were all adamant about forcing Zero Wing into a fight. Meanwhile, as the Starlight Alliance was planning all of this, Shifeng had finally arrived at Thunder Axe City's Central District. There was a lot of traffic in the city's Central District. Despite there being no players here, the street was still crowded. NPC merchants of neutral races could be seen doing business all around, selling all kinds of items and materials, the quality of their products not the slightest bit inferior to those sold by player shops. However, Shifeng did not waste time sightseeing. Instead, he walked straight to a mansion located near the main street. 20 giant soldiers stood guard outside the mansion, every one of them a level 180, tier 2 soldier. The captain leading these soldiers was even a level 180, tier 3 giant. He would be considered an overlord-level existence even in an empire. It's been a long time since a human adventurer has visited this city. I heard that you have the power to activate the ancient teleportation array outside Thunder Axe City. May I know if this is true? The giant elder asked softly as he observed Shifeng. That is correct. Here is the ancient cube I found. It is capable of activating the ancient teleportation array, Shifeng replied, handing the Rubik's Cube he obtained from the 7 Luminaries treasure chest over to the giant elder. Sure enough, this is the teleportation array's teleportation core, the giant elder said, his eyes glowing after he inspected the cube. In a somewhat excited tone, he added, "Thank you, human adventurer. This item is indeed what our giant race has been searching for all this time. With this item, our giant race will finally be free of the defensive seal that has been in place since ancient times. Since you have provided such a great help to our race, we giants definitely won't mistreat you. Take this precious giant's holy stone as a token of our race's gratitude." After the giant elder was done speaking and Shifeng accepted the giant's holy stone, a series of system notifications entered his ears. Chapter 2010, Titan Bloodline. System, congratulations. You have completed the exploration quest, Giant's Hideout. Rewarding 1 Giant's Holy Stone, Adventurers Association Reputation plus 20, and Adventurers Association Contribution plus 1000. System, congratulations. You have activated the neutral city Thunder Axe City. Rewarding 1 Thunder Axe Crystal, Thunder Axe City Reputation plus 100, and Thunder Axe City Contribution Points plus 2000. The 2 notifications echoed in Shifeng's head 3 times, leaving him dazed. The rewards for pioneering Thunder Axe City sure are abundant. Not only did I get 2000 contribution points, but I also earned a Thunder Axe Crystal. Shifeng looked at the glowing, dark gold crystal that had appeared in his hand in astonishment. Thunder Axe City was hidden deep within the Icefire Mountain range. Normally, players could only reach the city through a teleportation array within the range's outer region once it had been activated. Teleporting to Thunder Axe City from another NPC city was impossible, making it inconvenient for players to visit frequently. However, as a trade city, Thunder Axe City overflowed with opportunities and resources. Even if the journey were tough and inconvenient, players would force themselves to visit. Fortunately, there was more than one method of entering Thunder Axe City. One could also do so through the city's special tools. The city had 2 special tools that allowed players to visit with ease, the Thunder Axe Insignia and the Thunder Axe Crystal. The insignia only allowed the holder to teleport to Thunder Axe City, whereas the crystal allowed the user to open a teleportation gate, allowing a large group of players to pass through, saving plenty of travel time. However, these tools were particularly difficult to acquire. Players had to become an ordinary noble in Thunder Axe City before they could trade the city's contribution points for the insignia. As for the Thunder Axe Crystal, one could only purchase the crystal with contribution points after becoming a Viscount. The contribution points were already exceedingly difficult to acquire, not to mention gaining status in Thunder Axe City. Thunder Axe City was massive, with countless quests and opportunities to offer, but there were very few quests that awarded CPs. Moreover, players would only earn a small number of CPs from the quests that awarded them. Only high-ranking quests rewarded a higher number, but those were incredibly difficult to come by. Even the most hard-working player would fail to collect 2000 CPs after a full year of work. Meanwhile, purchasing the Thunder Axe Crystal required 5000 CPs. While the Thunder Axe Crystal had limited uses to individual players, it was extremely useful to guilds. With the crystal, guild members wouldn't have to waste time traveling to the city. With the time they saved, they could do far more in Thunder Axe City. Following which, Shifeng stored the Thunder Axe Crystal and turned his gaze toward the giant's holy stone he had received from the Great Elder. Based on what he had learned in the past, the exploration quest's reward included the epic ranked Giant's Crystal. One could use it to convert 1000 level 50+ players into giants, bypassing the conversion quest. Unfortunately, players under level 50 would have to visit Thunder Axe City and complete the conversion quest normally to convert into a giant. The conversion quest's application fee was 20 gold per person. In other words, by completing this exploration quest, one could forego the 20,000 gold in application fees while allowing selected players to skip the troublesome conversion quest and become members of the giant race. However, what the Great Elder had just given Shifeng wasn't the giant's crystal, but the giant's holy stone. Fragmented legendary rank? When Shifeng called up the giant's holy stone's attribute panel, he was shocked. Isn't this quest reward a little too generous? Giant's Holy Stone, fragmented legendary rank. A holy stone created after condensing the ancient Titan race's bloodline. Effect 1-. Converts up to 1000 players to the giant race. Targeted players must be level 50 or above. No cooldown. Effect 2-. Grants up to 3 giant players a strand of the Titan bloodline. No cooldown. Feng had no particular feelings regarding the Holy Stone's ability to convert 1,000 players into giants. Normally, only the ordinary administrators received visiting players in the city hall, so he had been caught off guard when this senior administrator welcomed him. Although this elven beauty was only a level 200, tier 3 senior administrator, Feng could feel the intense pressure radiating from her. The pressure she gave off was no weaker than Weissman's, who was both White River City's magistrate and a tier 4 great wizard. This was why elves were so frightening. Even at tier 3, they could easily cast tier 4 spells. Alright, please follow me. The elven administrator nodded and led Feng to a reception room on the 3rd floor. Once inside the reception room, the senior administrator handed Feng 2 lists. One list contained the city's available plots of land, while the other contained Thunder Axe City's available advanced shops. However, the lists contained very few of both, with less than 50 entries in total. If other players saw these lists, they'd be astounded. Most random NPC cities had more than 500 plots of land for sale, yet Thunder Axe City had less than 50. However, Feng was ecstatic to examine the lists. It was already impressive that the 2 lists had 50 prospects. Thunder Axe City was unique, and its lands weren't easy to purchase. This prevented the various superpowers from monopolizing the city's benefits, giving other powers and players a chance to thrive within the city. A bronze legatee status in Thunder Axe City sure is high. Feng sighed ruefully as he examined the first list. There are actually 19 advanced shops available. When he had been a baron in Thunder Axe City in the past and tried to purchase an advanced shop, he had only been given 12 to choose from. Advanced shops were often available in neutral cities. Like in the Sea of Trees, Thunder Axe City had advanced shops, such as advanced grocery stores, advanced restaurants, advanced smithies, and advanced bars, to offer. However, no power would normally be willing to purchase neutral cities' advanced shops. These advanced shops' incredibly high prices were the first reason. The second reason was advanced shops' lack of use. These shops' main customers were NPCs, not players, and one could only earn coins and other items from NPCs. Typically, this was an ineffective way of doing business since trading coins and items with other players was far more effective. However, Thunder Axe City was a special case. Since it was a resource and trade city, a large number of neutral NPC merchants gathered here. In addition, the local giants harvested the ores and herbs from the Icefire mountain range. As a result, the city offered a wider variety of items, selling these items at far below market value. Unlike in other neutral cities, Thunder Axe City's advanced shops had been quite popular in the past, becoming the main source of resources for God's domain's powers in the city. The various major powers had avoided renting Thunder Axe City's advanced shops because the only type of income they could earn in doing so was coins. It was not possible to conduct business with forms of currency. Hence, the various major powers and merchant players in the past had resorted to purchasing the advanced shops, even if those in the city's outskirts had cost 20,000 gold. No matter how many times I visit Thunder Axe City's city hall, I always feel like a poor bastard here. Feng sighed and shook his head as he looked at the prices on the list. The cheapest advanced shop cost more than 20,000 gold. There was also an advanced grocery store that cost 40,000 gold, and a smithy for 53,000 gold. Although both shops were in the city's inner area, both were merely 1-star shops. According to Feng's knowledge, the cheapest 2-star shop in Thunder Axe City cost 70,000 gold, while those in the city's inner area cost more than 100,000 gold. However, Thunder Axe City rarely sold 2-star shops. But when Feng read the list's last entry, he was flabbergasted. What? A 2-star shop? Chapter 2012, 2-Star Smithy. Feng stared at the shop list's last entry with wide eyes. A 2-star shop. Thunder Axe City did have a few 2-star shops, but they were beyond players' reach. Even a viscount would have to get lucky to secure an opportunity to purchase a 2-star shop, much less a baron. Could this be a reward for being the first person to purchase an advanced shop? Shifeng doubted that the bronze legatee title would grant him such an amazing benefit, allowing him to purchase 2-star shops in the city. After giving the matter some thought, he realized that this must be a reward for being the first player to purchase an advanced shop. The difference between a 1-star and a 2-star shop was practically negligible for players in other super large-scale neutral cities, but it was a different story in Thunder Axe City. Here, the difference between a 1-star shop and 2-star shop was like the difference between a town and a city. 2-star shops were more attractive to NPCs than their 1-star counterparts. NPCs typically viewed 2-star shops as more valuable and reliable, so they favored shops with higher star ranks. 2-star shops also operated on a different scale than 1-star shops, but this was beyond just the physical size of the shop. More importantly, higher-ranked shops could handle larger transactions with NPCs. Each transaction with NPCs in 1-star shops could only reach a maximum value of 50 gold, whereas 2-star shops transactions could reach a maximum of 300 gold, a 6-fold increase. After factoring in NPCs' increased interest in conducting business with 2-star shops, the difference between ranks was clear. Hence, Thunder Axe City's 2-star advanced shops were extremely valuable. Countless guilds had dreamed of purchasing their own, but very few had actually succeeded. Most powers had been limited to 1-star shops, slowly upgrading them to 2-star status. However, in God's domain, once one fell behind, making a recovery became intensely challenging. Meanwhile, the various large guilds dreamed of purchasing 2-star shops to ensure the upgrade to 3-stat status. NPC cities could only have a limited number of 3-star advanced shops at a time. Once this limit had been reached, the 2-star shops that met the requirements for an upgrade could only become 3-star shops after surpassing another 3-star shop's transaction volume. Unfortunately, surpassing a 3-star shop's transaction volume was nearly impossible for a 2-star shop. When a 2-star shop completed its promotion to 3-star status, it would undergo a qualitative transformation, increasing its maximum transaction value to 1,000 gold. Although the increase ratio wasn't as great as that between a 1-star and 2-star shop, it was a major turning point. Once a shop reached this maximum transaction value, Thunder Axe City's nobles would visit to conduct business. The items these nobles possessed was far beyond that of ordinary NPCs. A noble's every item was valuable and precious. Upgrading a 1-star shop to 2-star status in Thunder Axe City cost a lot of time and resources. By the time one completed the upgrade, those who had purchased 2-star shops would have already upgraded to 3-star status. Trying to contest for the limited 3-star shop slots would become atrociously difficult at that point. This was also why Shadow had only possessed a 2-star shop in Thunder Axe City during Shifeng's previous life. As far as he could remember, only superpowers and a few first-rate guilds had secured 3-star shops in the city, and ordinary first-rate guilds had no hope of competing for a slot. Why wouldn't Shifeng be surprised to find that he could purchase a 2-star shop right off the bat? Moreover, the 2-star shop in question was an advanced smithy. Naturally, smithies were the most valuable to God's domain's guilds among the various advanced shops. This was the case due to the specialized transactions each type of shop conducted with NPCs. NPCs that visited smithies were generally there to order custom weapons and equipment. Moreover, these NPCs would prepare their own materials, including rare forging materials that players could obtain by operating a smithy. In addition, ordinary NPCs and NPC merchants frequently sold their ores to smithies, making these advanced shops the perfect place to obtain materials. Lord Bronze Legatee, are any of these lands and shops to your liking? The elven administrator asked curiously after Shifeng's long moment of silence. If nothing here interests you, you may return next week. We should have others who want to sell their properties at that time. No, I'm very satisfied with what I've seen. I'll take these 5 plots of land and these 2 shops, Shifeng said as he pointed to the inner area lands and outer area shops. Since he was only a baron, he could only purchase lands and shops in the city's inner and outer areas. Moreover, very few lands in the inner area were available to him, and they weren't in optimal locations. As for advanced shops, a baron was only allowed to purchase those in the city's outer area. Only viscounts and above had access to advanced shops in the inner area. However, this discovery relieved Shifeng. If he had only been offered advanced shops in the city's inner area, he'd only be able to purchase the 2-star smithy along the city's edge with the money he had on him. Even so, the 2-star smithy already cost him 90,000 gold, and the 1-star potion shop he had selected cost 47,000 gold. Very well. The total for these 5 lands and 2 shops comes to 206,000 gold, the 11 beauty joyfully exclaimed after swiftly completing her calculations. If first-rate guilds upper echelons saw Shifeng spend over 200,000 gold on 2 shops and 5 lands, they'd think that he'd lost his mind. With so much money, one could purchase more than 10 plots of land in the heart of a kingdom's capital. However, Shifeng paid the 206,000 gold without hesitation. Rather, he found the price quite reasonable. While this investment might not yield any short-term returns, the profits would be well worth the cost once players entered the game's later stages. Shifeng had only brought a little over 170,000 gold with him when he had set out on his exploration quest. He had also spent over 20,000 gold in Glory Town. Fortunately, while he had been gone, the guild had accumulated over 70,000 gold in savings, despite Zero Wing's continued expansion. He just barely had enough to settle the bill. He wouldn't have much left after this transaction. A short moment later, the elven administrator revealed 7 deeds and handed them to Shifeng. Once he verified that everything was correct, Shifeng set off toward his new advanced shops. He stored 5,000 gold in each shop for NPC transactions. With his tasks completed, Shifeng didn't linger in Thunder Axe City. He used a return scroll and teleported back to White River City. Contrary to his expectations, Shifeng didn't find White River City in desolation upon his return. Now Zero Wing had temporarily withdrawn from the struggle in the Witch's Hill, its prestige in Starmoon City had fallen, but as he wandered White River City streets, he noticed that the city's population had increased yet again. Shifeng saw countless players from large guilds on his way to the Candlelight trading firm. These guild players wandered the city with enthusiasm, making up roughly 10% of the players on the streets. White River City had already become a major city with a player population of over 10 million. 10% of that equated over 1 million guild players, a significant number. Melancholic, has something happened in White River City? Why are there so many players from other guilds? Shifeng asked Melancholic Smile after returning to the Candlelight trading firm and storing the Titan ore he had obtained during his exploration quest. Nothing has happened recently, Melancholic Smile answered, smiling bitterly. So many guild players are here due to the losses our guild suffered in the Witch's Hill thanks to the Starlight Alliance. After our withdrawal, the Alliance called us out to fight in an all-out war. If we refuse, the Starlight Alliance will slay every player in Zero Wing City. Our guild members have been fighting the Alliance's members all over the kingdom, but the results aren't pleasing. Because of this, every large guild in Starmoon Kingdom thinks that it has a chance of taking over White River City. They're all preparing to do so. These guilds really know how to take advantage of an opportunity. Shifeng could not help but chuckle upon hearing Melancholic Smile's report. Since the Starlight Alliance wants a fight to the death in the Witch's Hill, I'll grant their wish. Notify Aqua immediately and have her gather 1,000 Tier 2 shield warriors and berserkers in White River City's residence. I'll notify her right away, Melancholic Smile said, nodding. Chapter 2013, Advanced Abilities Activated. After assigning Melancholic Smile's tasks, Shifeng departed from the Candlelight trading firm and headed to White River City's library. He had been bound by the soul chain all this time, and no matter how he looked at it, finding the mysterious NPC that had appeared in Blackwing City was simply unrealistic. Even if he found the NPC, he'd have to avoid the man. Not even Charlene, who had been a Tier 5 red official, had been able to stop him. How was a Tier 2 player like himself supposed to deal with the NPC? The true goal of his quest wasn't to locate the mysterious NPC, but to collect enough mysterious flames to gain control of the soul fire. While Aqua Rose gathered the necessary manpower, he could take advantage of this time to enlist Charlin's help with absorbing the fallen earth fire, which he had obtained during his exploration quest. Although Tier 2 players weren't as rare anymore, they still made up a small minority of God's Domain's players. This was the case for Zero Wing, as well. Gathering 1,000 Tier 2 shield warriors and berserkers would take Aqua Rose some time. Meanwhile, after Melancholic Smile relayed Shifeng's words to Aqua Rose began to secretly gather Zero Wing's Tier 2 experts from the Ore Empire and Star Moon Kingdom. She instructed her chosen experts to teleport directly to White River City's residence. Unfortunately, despite the care she used while performing her task, news of her actions soon reached the kingdom's various major powers. Star Moon City, Star Alliance's residence. Guild leader, we've just received news. Zero Wing is gathering 1,000 Tier 2 experts in White River City. We do not know what the guild plans to do with them yet, Purple Eye reported as she entered the guild leader's office. Although more players had been completing their Tier 2 promotion quests, there still weren't many Tier 2 players in the game. Take the Star Alliance, for example. Despite being a first-rate guild, it just barely had 3,000 Tier 2 players. The fact that Zero Wing was gathering 1,000 of these experts warranted scrutiny. 1,000 Tier 2 experts. Galaxy Past considered the situation carefully, muttering, could Zero Wing be preparing to move against the Starlight Alliance? Currently, Star Moon Kingdom's various major powers were eagerly preparing for battle, and Zero Wing's sudden withdrawal from the Witch's Hill was the reason for this. In addition, the Starlight Alliance's reputation had received a massive boost due to the sudden development. If Zero Wing did not put a stop to this, it might lose its position as the kingdom's overlord. God's Domain had changed, and more Tier 2 players surfaced each day. While Zero Wing might have a lot of these experts, the difference between their count and the total number of Tier 2 players in the kingdom was titanic. Zero Wing wouldn't be able to maintain its dominance over the kingdom if its development stagnated. Even the various superpowers faced such a problem. Hence, for a considerable period in the immediate future, God's Domain's kingdoms and empires would enter an era of strife. It would no longer be possible for a single power to monopolize a country. The various superpowers could only maintain their advantages and their current status in their territories. That can't be possible, right? Zero Wing intends to strike out against the Starlight Alliance now? Purple Eye was astonished by Galaxy Past's guess. Doesn't Zero Wing know that the top adventurer team, War Riders, secretly partnered with the Alliance? If a fight breaks out, Zero Wing will suffer. The War Riders were a mercenary-like adventurer team. It was one of the few adventurer teams in God's Domain that had tens of thousands of members. As long as one paid enough, the War Riders would move against any power. Superpowers were no exception. In a past virtual reality game, a guild had hired the War Riders to attack the super guild, Battle Wolves. Of course, they didn't target the entire guild, simply one of the branch guilds. Even so, the Battle Wolves' first guild leader managed that branch guild, and it wasn't to be trifled with. However, the War Riders had paid no heed to the guild's strength. They had initiated a war without hesitation, and although the Battle Wolves had pummeled the War Riders in the end, the Super Guild had suffered significant losses. Because of the assault, the Battle Wolves still had a bounty out on the adventurer team. The War Riders hadn't changed after joining God's Domain, and as time passed, both its reputation and its strength grew. As a result, many independent experts that wanted to earn some side income sought to join the adventurer team. After all, the War Riders' sole goal was earning money. Members of the War Riders had no obligations and responsibilities to the team. Just some time ago, the War Riders' member count had exceeded 30,000. Now, it was already considered a super, large-scale adventurer team, and many first-rate guilds feared its overall strength. I don't know. I can never tell what Black Flame is thinking, but he's preparing for something. However, with the War Riders' participation, the Starlight Alliance should maintain its status quo even if Zero Wing prepares for an assault. We should use this opportunity to further our development in the kingdom's various cities, Galaxy Past said, chuckling as he shook his head. The various major powers had been busy trying to solidify their positions lately. Now that the sudden development in Star Moon Kingdom troubled Zero Wing, this was the perfect opportunity for the Star Alliance to become the kingdom's #1 guild. Meanwhile, the kingdom's other major powers concocted their own schemes. As soon as the Starlight Alliance defeated Zero Wing, they would spread their influence throughout the various NPC cities, especially White River City, the kingdom's most populated city. As Star Moon Kingdom's various major powers planned and prepared, Shifeng arrived before White River City's library. The library had changed drastically due to the city's latest promotion. Now, it looked more like a castle than a library. A large number of magical class players had gathered at the building, many here because of quests. So many magical class players had come here to quest due to the library's new function magic walkthrough. This function gave players access to the gigantic, magic water globe in the center of the library, allowing them to learn the double casting technique. Not many magical class experts had mastered the double casting technique at this stage of the game, but now that the system provided a tutorial, magical class players swarmed to take advantage of the opportunity. However, using the magic water globe required library contribution points and magic crystals. The required magic crystals were a small matter for magic class experts, but the library contribution points could only be obtained by completing the library's quests. Hence, so many magical class players eagerly quested at the library. After a brief look at the library's first-floor hall, Shifeng made his way to the Star Moon Hall on the library's top floor. As always, Charlene sat in the hall reading some tome. She only set the book down after noticing Shifeng before she began to draw the magic array that would help him absorb the fallen earth fire. Once the magic array took shape, Shifeng retrieved the fallen earth fire and wrapped the soul fire's scorching flames around it. However, fusing with the fallen earth fire proved far more difficult than fusing with the purple thunder flame. This time, Shifeng felt as if he were trying to wrap a sheet of paper around a bonfire. His control of the soul fire had to be precise. The slightest mistake could throw the process off balance, which would cause the fusion to fail. After 32 subsequent failures, Shifeng finally encased the fallen earth fire in soul fire successfully. The moment the fusion succeeded, flames devoured his body. He felt the flames burn and sting his flesh as he succumbed to a splitting headache. Shortly after, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System, congratulations. You have successfully fused the fallen earth fire and activated the soul fire's advanced abilities. Chapter 2014, Soul Cleansing. I still don't have full control? When Shifeng heard the system notification, he was disappointed. This soul fire really is troublesome. He could only shed his worries about the soul chain by gaining full control of the soul fire. However, he hadn't expected 2 Tier 3 mysterious flames to not be enough. Tier 3 mysterious flames were as valuable as fragmented legendary items. It was easy to imagine how hard they were to obtain, yet the system informed him that he needed more. Who knew when he would encounter another Tier 3 mysterious flame? It really is surprising that you managed to obtain 2 Tier 3 mysterious flames in such a short time. Although you haven't gained full control over the soul fire, fusing it with 2 Tier 3 mysterious flames has increased your compatibility with it. Now, you won't have to worry about the soul chain's corrosion for another 300 days, Charlene, who wore a crimson dress, said and nodded approvingly as she watched Shifeng. Moreover, there are benefits to being compatible with the soul fire, so don't look so dejected. Benefits? Shifeng muttered skeptically as he gazed at the blue fire enveloping his body. He didn't understand how the soul fire's present state could benefit him in any way. His entire body stung with pain. Any ordinary player would wail like a ghost if they were in his position, but even though he could endure the pain, it made concentrating difficult. At this moment, he'd likely even fail to execute the simplest combat technique. Learn to appreciate what you have. The soul fire is currently cleansing your soul, Charlene explained as she rolled her eyes at Shifeng. This is soul cleansing? Charlin's words astonished Shifeng. So, this is the soul fire's advanced ability? He had heard about soul cleansing during his previous life. It was one of the few methods to improve players' concentration attribute. If ranked by importance, one could argue that concentration stood above stamina. When players fought in God's domain, they used two hidden attributes, stamina and concentration. In the event of stamina exhaustion, players would lose the ability to move. In the case of concentration depletion, players would pass out. God's domain provided far fewer methods of increasing one's concentration than those available for improving stamina, which was one of the reasons that the former was more important. Generally, players' concentration only improved when they increased their basic attributes and tiers. Concentration's ability to affect a player's mental state was another reason. Players had only discovered this quite some time after God's domain had launched. This effect was similar to the experience players had when in areas with high mana density. In truth, players felt more comfortable around denser mana due to the mana elevating their concentration. In other words, higher concentration allowed players to focus and maintain their calm more easily. The higher a player's concentration was, the more physical control they'd have. This was the third, and most important, reason. Players could manipulate their physical limits more easily, which was why, after reaching higher tiers, players could execute actions or techniques that their bodies couldn't previously handle. For example, a Tier 2 player might struggle to master a complex advanced combat technique, but could do so after reaching Tier 3. These were the reasons that all of God's domain's experts had frantically sought to improve their concentration in Shifeng's previous life. Unfortunately, the available methods to do so were just as rare as fragmented legendary items. The various superpowers would have even gone to war over a discovered method. In the past, there had been multiple instances of items that could increase concentration appearing in the dark auction. The various superpowers had even willingly traded fragmented legendary items for items that only granted a 5% boost to concentration. They had even exchanged fragmented legendary weapons for items that granted a 10% boost without hesitation. As far as Shifeng could remember, soul cleansing provided between 5% and 15% more concentration. He had never dreamed that he'd get to experience the phenomenon now. After 10 minutes or so, the blue flames finally subsided. When they did, Shifeng felt more refreshed than he ever had before. Chapter 2015, Approaching Storm. WildhammerTown. Aqua Rose was stunned to hear Shifeng's target. WildhammerTown was one of the two guild towns in the Witch's Hill. It was also the town that Knight's Judgment poured its resources into developing. At this point, the town had as many as 12 defense turrets. How were they supposed to capture the town with just 1,000 Tier 2 players? WildhammerTown doesn't need to exist anymore. Shifeng nodded, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Sensing the killing intent radiating from Shifeng, Aqua Rose recognized his determination. She was at a loss for words. Zero Wing had never tried to stop any of the large guilds from developing in the Witch's Hill. After all, the more popular the Witch's Hill became, the more of an asset it would be to Zero Wing. However, not only had the Starlight Alliance openly declared war on Zero Wing, but it had also made multiple attempts to provoke the guild. It was only natural that Zero Wing issue a response. Unfortunately, WildhammerTown's defenses easily surpassed those of a basic town. Even several tens of thousands of elite and expert players might not be enough to capture a normally fortified basic town, much less WildhammerTown, which the Starlight Alliance had invested a ton of resources and manpower into. When Shifeng finished speaking, he turned on his heel and headed toward the guild warehouse, leaving behind a worried Aqua Rose in the guild hall's threshold. Aqua Rose promptly recovered and notified the 1,000 Tier 2 experts of Shifeng's instructions. She had them collect their master regeneration potions and teleport to Zero Wing City. Shortly after the Tier 2 experts left, a few spies hiding in Zero Wing reported to their superiors in the various large guilds. What? Zero Wing plans to fight the Starlight Alliance in the Witch's Hill? It seems we'll get an interesting show in the Witch's Hill soon. Notify our guild members. Everyone is to prepare to move at a moment's notice. Once Zero Wing has been defeated, we'll attack its guild members in the fields. We cannot let the kingdom's other guilds steal this opportunity to make a name for themselves. When the various major powers' upper echelons learned that the 1,000-man team of Tier 2 experts in Zero Wing's White River City residence had teleported to Zero Wing City, they knew that the guild had gotten serious. They immediately commanded their guild members to prepare for Zero Wing's defeat. When news of Zero Wing's movements reached the Starlight Alliance, the allied guilds made their own preparations. Zero Wing is finally on the move. Zero Wing is, after all, Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild. To protect its reputation, Zero Wing must fight us. How could it continue in the kingdom if it hides like a coward? Notify the War Riders. Tell them to gather in the Witch's Hill. We have so many monster players and experts on our side. Including the War Riders, who are equipped for large-scale field combat, will force Zero Wing into ruin. Hopefully, Zero Wing doesn't surrender too quickly. I don't want our plan to whittle down Zero Wing's main force to go to waste. In that case, we should deliberately act weak and let Zero Wing assume that victory is within its grasp. That way, we'll be able to sap away the guild's strength. Right. Let's do that. Notify our teams to hold back a little. However, they are to kill as many players wielding magic-breaking crossbows and basic combat devices as possible. The various representatives in the Starlight Alliance's meeting voiced their opinions. Soon, they all reached a consensus and decided to toy with Zero Wing on the battlefield. For a time, the experts from the Starlight Alliance's dozen or so member guilds gathered in the Witch's Hill. At the same time, a large group of players from the War Riders Adventurer team appeared in Zero Wing City. Despite being Adventurer team members, these players moved with the discipline of guild players. Not only were all of them level 57 or higher, but they also had over 1,000 Tier 2 players with them. It wasn't long before the players in the teleportation hall noticed these adventurer team members. Zero Wing? I've been hearing this name for so long. Hopefully, the guild isn't too disappointing, a level 60, Tier 2 Guardian Knight muttered as he exited the teleportation array and glanced over Zero Wing City's teleportation hall, a hint of excitement shining in his eyes. When adventurer team experts in the hall noticed this cloaked shield warrior with a mana-imbued shield in the hall, they gasped. Why is Roaring Flame here? Are the War Riders participating in the guild war? Many experts were shocked as they stared at this unruly, middle-aged man. The War Riders Adventurer team was among the best adventurer teams in God's domain right now. Roaring Flame, the War Riders commander, even ranked among the top 100 on the God's Domain's experts list. Countless adventurer team players in God's Domain revered him as an idol. With the War Riders' sudden appearance in a backwater area like Star Moon Kingdom, why wouldn't these players be surprised? For a time, tension shot through Zero Wing City due to the War Riders' presence. Zero Wing's members were particularly concerned when they saw the War Riders' multiple 1,000-man teams marching through the city streets. Meanwhile, in Zero Wing City's residence, guild leader, members of the War Riders Adventurer team have appeared in Zero Wing City, Aqua Rose reported to Sherfong. I suspect that the Starlight Alliance has invited them here. Why don't we eliminate them? She was quite familiar with the War Riders Adventurer Tarn. Unlike orthodox adventurer teams, the War Riders operated like a band of mercenaries. Not only were the adventurer team's members individually powerful, but they were also particularly adept in large-scale combat as a team. The War Riders had proved their capacity for top-notch battle strategies and formations that allowed the team members to exhibit greater strength than it should reasonably be able to. Many superpowers had suffered significant losses at the War Riders' hands. In Aqua Rose's opinion, the fact that the War Riders had arrived in Zero Wing City spelled nothing good for the guild. If the adventurer team wanted to develop in the Witch's Hill, it should seek permission from Zero Wing first. The fact that the adventurer team hadn't meant that it was under the Starlight Alliance's employ. Meanwhile, now that the War Riders were inside Zero Wing City, the guild had the home ground advantage. This was the perfect opportunity to remove the adventurer team from the equation. With Zero Wing's defenses, not even the infamous war riders had any hope of leaving the city alive. Forget it. Even though they have allied with the Starlight Alliance, they haven't openly opposed us. If we kill them in Zero Wing City, it will only cause a panic among the independent players and various adventurer teams in the city, which would be detrimental to Zero Wing's development, Shifeng said, chuckling as he shook his head. Roaring Flame should have considered this, in Shifeng's opinion, so the man teleported to Zero Wing City alongside his teammates. Shifeng had to admit that the Roaring Flame was a calculating individual. It was no wonder why the War Riders had become one of God's Domain's true top adventurer teams in the past, an existence that even the various superpowers had feared. I guess you're right, but I don't like the idea of letting them take advantage of us, Aqua Rose grumbled, frustrated. Despite the War Riders' bold use of their teleportation services, they couldn't do anything about it. Take advantage of us? Shifeng laughed. Our services are not that easy to take advantage of. Renew the teleportation settings. For today only, adjust Zero Wing City's teleportation fees to their maximum. The War Riders can use our services as much as they want to. Understood. I'll see to it immediately. Aqua Rose joyfully replied. If they adjusted the teleportation fee to the maximum, even Tier 2 experts would wince at the expense. Chapter 2016, Giant Conversion Zero Wing, 4 Towers of Elements. Due to the 4 Towers of Elements teleportation ability and the Witch's Hill's popularity, an extraordinarily large number of players gathered at the towers to use the teleportation service each day. Even though the Starlight Alliance had placed a teleportation seal on Zero Wing City, such teleportation seals could only be maintained for a certain time. Constant seals didn't exist. Hence, for the sake of safe and convenient travel, players still visited the 4 Towers of Elements. However, the players currently visiting the towers were in an uproar. What's going on? Why is the teleportation fee suddenly so expensive? I'm only traveling within the Witch's Hill map, yet I have to pay more than 1 gold. This is daylight robbery. Even as a Tier 2 player, I only earn 1 or 2 gold coins in profit per day in the Witch's Hill. Has Zero Wing gone insane? The players visiting the 4 Towers of Elements heatedly debated over the sudden increase in teleportation fees. Meanwhile, the multiple 1,000-man teams that had lined up in one of the towers was just as stunned by the discovery. Commander, Zero Wing is too sinister. It raised the teleportation fee. We have 20,000 people that need to travel, which will cost more than 23,000 gold in total. Zero Wing has done this on purpose, a female, Tier 2 Cursmancer in a set of grey robes fumed as she complained to Roaring Flame. Although their adventurer team had a lot of members, they didn't have nearly as many funds as a first-rate guild. Currently, they had only saved up around 70,000 gold in their shared warehouse. If they spent over 23,000 gold on teleportation fees, they would lose over 1/3 of their adventurer team's liquid funds, significantly impacting their ability to purchase resources and nurture new members. It seems Zero Wing has noticed us, but this type of greeting is certainly unorthodox, Roaring Flame said, laughing. Since Zero Wing doesn't want to allow us to teleport out of the city, we'll walk. Zero Wing is cowardly. It is afraid of us working with the Starlight Alliance against its forces, so it has used this plan deliberately to buy time, the level 59, Tier 2 Cursmancer asked, clicking her tongue. I had thought Zero Wing was a mysterious and powerful guild, but it seems that there's nothing really special about it after all. Does Zero Wing really think delaying us will change anything? With no other choice, the War Riders left Zero Wing City through the city's entrance. Meanwhile, a 100-man team stood on the top floor of the tower the War Riders had left. Although these team members had hidden under black cloaks, their auras were intense enough to drive Tier 2 players away. If Shifeng were present, he would have noticed that this 100-man team consisted of Blackwater's Heavenly Eagle Legion, established by Wuxia. Quite a few of these players were Refinement Realm experts, and Snow Scar, the leader of the team, had recently risen through the ranks on the God's Domains experts list, earning the title of Spear Demon. So, it's true, as the report stated, the War Riders have joined the Starlight Alliance. Zero Wing is in for a tough fight. Zero Wing is pitiful. It's going to lose its position as Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild before we even have a chance to take action. That's right. Sin Realm has deep connections with Beast Emperor, so the guild has gotten its hands on the power to transform players into monsters. Based on what we've learned, the Star Alliance has prepared over 3,000 monster players to ensure Zero Wing's destruction. It's also dispatched another 20,000 experts, and the War Riders are providing reinforcements. As long as Zero Wing leaves this city, the Starlight Alliance will devour it. I've heard that Roaring Flame, the War Riders' commander, is exceptionally strong. Seeing him now, he truly seems powerful. It's no wonder why he dared to reject the Vice Guild leader's recruitment offer. Seeing his strength makes me want to challenge him to a duel. I'd rather duel Black Flame. I want to see if he is as powerful as the rumors make him out to be. Alright, enough. Don't forget our task. As the discussion reached a tipping point, Snow Scar interjected. Everyone on the team immediately shut their mouths. Chapter 2017, Giant Raid Witch's Hill, WildhammerTown. Due to its proximity to the Million Forest, which made travel to the Otherworld Gate considerably easier, and the investments from multiple corporations, WildhammerTown's player population had grown past 600,000. Player shops filled the town alongside the variety of virtual stores, which were run by real-world corporations. The town was no less prosperous than a minor NPC town. Since the Starlight Alliance was growing stronger, the number of merchant players and adventurer teams visiting the town continued to increase. Sooner or later, WildhammerTown would become the main hub for players wanting to grind in the Million Forest. Although the town had to deal with the occasional monster siege, the Starlight Alliance had solid fortifications. Despite being a basic town, WildhammerTown was surrounded by tall, solid walls, and over a dozen defense turrets and another dozen or so arrow towers had been built along the walls. The Starlight Alliance had also ensured that more than 20,000 players protected the town constantly. With all these defenses, not even the Witch's Hill's monsters could cause any damage. Moreover, the guilds that made up the Starlight Alliance had constructed more than a dozen temporary guild residences. Even in the event that the town's defenses failed to repel an enemy invasion, the guilds could easily call in more than 100,000 players as reinforcements at a moment's notice. One could say that WildhammerTown was the safest town in Star Moon Kingdom. As the sun set, the afterglow gradually covered the earth as darkness began to awake from its slumber. Currently, a robust man carrying a silver longbow climbed atop one of WildhammerTown's defense turrets and quietly observed the distant forest. The 6-man party that guarded the turret stopped slacking the moment they noticed this man, growing nervous. Although this Tier 2 Ranger was only level 57, an insignificant level in a guild like Knight's Judgment since so many Tier 2 players had already reached level 58 and beyond, the 6-man party only had admiration and respect for the man before him. This man was one of the only 6 players in Knight's Judgment that had obtained an advanced legacy. He was also the only expert in the guild to complete the Hell Mode promotion quest. He had been dubbed Soul Chaser in Star Moon Kingdom 8 Feathers. Anyone who had challenged the Tier 2 promotion quest understood how difficult the quest was. A lot of players had to spend a long time preparing for the normal mode promotion quest. Some expert players had even failed their promotion quests after reaching their current levels, still stuck at Tier 1. The Hell Mode promotion quest was practically a legend among players right now, yet 8 Feathers had completed it. Some time ago, the Ranger had sparred with Sin Realm's famous 7 great experts. Although he hadn't defeated any of them, he hadn't lost either. Sin Realm's 7 great experts ranked at the very peak of Purple Thorn's Kingdom's players, but unlike these experts, 8 Feathers was still in his early 20s. He still had plenty of time for growth. The forest seems pretty quiet today. I doubt we'll see any monster sieges, 8 Feathers said, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes as he gazed at the forest. The 6 players on duty nodded in approval. They were also disappointed with the lack of activity. Although fending off monster sieges was troublesome, it was an opportunity to obtain treasures and train. The players on duty yesterday were so lucky. They got to participate in a monster siege. Why don't we get to have any fun? I've heard that Commander 8 made a killing yesterday. He even managed to obtain a piece of level 55 secret silver equipment and over 20 primordial crystal fragments. I heard the same. The players on duty also earned 2 or 3 fragments each. They're so lucky. With a few more fragments, they can synthesize them into a full crystal and upgrade their guild mounts to bronze rank. The bronze guild mount speed and appearances are to die for. I wonder when I'll get to synthesize my own crystal. There's no need to be in such a hurry. Zero Wing has decided to fight the Starlight Alliance. Once it's defeated, the Witch's Hill's resources will be ours for the taking. Obtaining a primordial crystal will be a piece of cake. I guess you're right. But isn't Zero Wing full of itself? Just because it is Star Moon Kingdom's #1 guild, it is taking us lightly. Doesn't the guild realize that we've entered a new era? Tier 2 players have already become commonplace. With how few Tier 2 experts Zero Wing has, how could it suppress the dozen or so guilds in the Starlight Alliance? When the plays atop the defense turret spoke about Zero Wing, they could not help but laugh at and ridicule the guild's ignorance. Even now, it tried to cling to its past achievements. However, as these players began to discuss where they should go to grind for primordial crystal fragments, a spatial tear suddenly opened near the town's main entrance, adding a bizarre effect to the reddening sky. The spatial tear continued to grow until it formed a black hole. Once the black hole had stabilized, a figure emerged and stepped onto WildhammerTown's main street. A monster siege? Watching from the defense turrets, the players on duty didn't have a clear view of the figure. They could only see the invader's enormous framer. This invader was far larger than the players wandering the streets, so the watching players assumed that it must be a monster. No. That marker. That guy's a player. 8 Feathers, who had incredible sight, exclaimed as he shook his head, his expression grim. The invader was 4 meters tall and radiated an aura resembling that of a wild beast. No matter how he considered the situation, this invader would be difficult to deal with. Moreover, the invading player was level 60, which only peak experts had reached at this stage of the game. This only solidified the idea that this player wasn't to be trifled with. Shortly after the first giant appeared, more began to emerge from the black hole. In a brief moment, several dozen giant players graced WildhammerTown streets. Most importantly, these giant players wore the 6-winged emblem of Zero Wing. Zero Wing's members dare to trespass in our WildhammerTown? Are they that tired of living? Commander, let's blast them to smithereens. No matter how powerful players were, they were still players. Against the defense turrets, they were little more than cannon fodder. The fact that Zero Wing's members had grown larger only made them easier targets. The defense turret's AoE is too large. There are other players on the street. With so few of them, the NPC soldiers and patrol squads can deal with them easily enough. 8 Feathers said. The defense turret's attacks did not differentiate between friend and foe. If they accidentally bombarded bystanders, it would be very bad for the town's reputation. Rather than using the defense turrets, it was wiser to let the several thousand NPC soldiers and 20,000 player guards deal with these intruders. Furthermore, Zero Wing had only arrived with several dozen members. They didn't need to employ the defense turrets for such a small force. However, when one of Night's Judgment's patrol squads reached Zero Wing's giant players, one of Zero Wing's massive members executed a Tier 1 whirlwind slash with his battle axe. The impact threw 10 or so players from the 100-man team over a dozen yards away. The squad's Tier 2 players remained standing, but for Tier 1 players, only those that wore plate armor had survived the attack. The rest had died instantly, their bodies transforming into streaks of light before disappearing. Chapter 2018, battle at Wildhammer. Due to the frightening power the axe-wielding giant player had just displayed, the bystanders on the street had fallen silent. When they looked at the shattered ground beneath the giant player's feet, they could not help but grow nervous. So strong. Zero Wing isn't seriously attacking WildhammerTown, is it? Has Zero Wing gone insane? It actually dares to attack WildhammerTown directly? If they had been confused about why such a small group from Zero Wing had appeared in WildhammerTown, they weren't now. Zero Wing intended to strike out against the Starlight Alliance, and it would use WildhammerTown to do it, the Alliance's most important base. Just as the surrounding crowd whispered among themselves, Zero Wing's Tier 2 giant players annihilated the first 100-man patrol squad that had greeted them. Even Knight's Judgment's Tier 2 players fell helplessly before the giant berserkers. After witnessing the giant players' combat power, the bystanders fled the scene, only daring to watch the battle from a long, safe distance. "Commander, the bystanders have left the battlefield. Should we open fire?" One of the players on duty at the defense turret turned to 8 Feathers, asking for confirmation. Zero Wing's giant players had displayed far greater combat power than they had expected. The patrol squad had consisted of 100 elite and expert players from Knight's Judgment, yet these several dozen intruders had wiped out the squad in less than 10 seconds. The giant players' mighty strength had carved out numerous craters on the town's main street. If these players were allowed to wreak havoc, WildhammerTown would suffer significant damage. Sure enough, Zero Wing has come prepared. Open fire. Annihilate them before they leave that street. We cannot let them cause damage to the rest of the town. 8 Feathers commanded through the team chat. Even he felt slightly threatened as he watched Zero Wing's giant players. If they were allowed to destroy the town and kill these players, the consequences would be unimaginable. Understood. Upon hearing 8 Feathers' command, the players manning the town's defense turrets went into action. Very quickly, over a dozen defense turrets turned and fired upon the giant players simultaneously. A series of explosions rang out from the defense turrets. With the turrets' range and AoE attacks, Zero Wing's members had no hope of escaping the blast radius in time. However, a dozen or so Tier 2 shield warriors among the giant players suddenly stepped forward and raised their shields, receiving the cannon shells. Boom. 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 The cannon shells exploded as they collided with the shields, and the resulting shockwaves were so intense that even the players some distance away could feel them. However, once the dust settled, the revealed scene stupefied the watching players. Not only had the giant shield warriors survived the attacks, but they also remained in their original positions. Not one of them had taken a single step back. Moreover, the shield warriors hadn't even lost 10% of their HPs. How high is their defense? Those were Tier 3 attacks. The players manning the defense turrets stared at the barely injured intruders in astonishment. The defense turret's cannon shells could even deal over -300,000 damage to Tier 3 NPCs. The attacks would kill players instantly if they landed. A Tier 2 shield warrior with both a berserk skill and a life-saving skill might survive, but only barely. However, the giant players had taken almost no damage after receiving the defense turret's attacks. They would look as good as new if they simply dusted off their armor. "Commander, what should we do?" the players manning the defense turrets asked 8 Feathers desperately. "Prepare to fire another round. Once the cooldown ends, fire." Even 8 Feathers watched Zero Wing's giant players with a grim expression. Finishing them off would take quite some time with how high these giants' defense and strength were. Meanwhile, these dozen or so giant players would wreak havoc in WildhammerTown. The moment 8 Feathers finished issuing his command, he caught sight of more giant players emerging from the black hole. He was so shocked that his mind froze momentarily. But contrary to his expectations, these giant players didn't start a rampant slaughter. After exiting the black hole, the new arrivals guarded their position alongside the first group of giants. "Quick! Notify the guild leader. Request reinforcements to WildhammerTown immediately." 8 Feathers barked as a foreboding feeling overwhelmed him. When one normally launched a surprise attack on an opponent's town, they do their best to avoid the town's defenses and cause as much destruction as possible. After all, the defense turrets and arrow towers' power was no laughing matter, and every guild town had plenty of NPC soldiers for security. Once the invaders were surrounded, they'd be doomed. However, Zero Wing's giant players showed no intention of doing so. They simply stood on the main street and wasted time as they fell into a defensive formation. No matter how one looked at the situation, their behavior seemed foolish. The more time Zero Wing wasted, the more of an advantage the town's defenders would have. But was Zero Wing truly that foolish? As Eight Feathers watched more giant players gather on the main street, his hands began to tremble. However, he didn't tremble with excitement, but because he had considered a possibility. His enemy didn't care about advantages or disadvantages. Zero Wing had full confidence in its ability to capture WildhammerTown. The players manning the defense turret felt that Eight Feathers was making a mountain of a molehill. The intruders were merely a small group of giant players, not a 1 million strong army. Did they really need every guild in the Starlight Alliance to send reinforcements? However, despite their opinions, they followed the Rangers' orders and contacted their guild leader, letting him decide what should be done. After a short moment, 1,000 giant players had gathered in WildhammerTown. The crowd's breathing grew heavy as they watched the invaders. A single giant player could easily negate a defense turret's attack, and 1,000 of these monstrous players now stood in the middle of their town. Tension shot through the town's independent players and those from Knight's Judgment. When everyone began to assume that nothing else would emerge from the black hole, a figure, which was considerably smaller than the giant players, appeared. When they saw this figure, both the independent players and Knight's Judgment's members grew even more nervous. Black Flame? Black Flame is leading the attack himself? Everyone in Star Moon Kingdom knew the name Black Flame. He was a legendary existence that had the power to stand against a Tier 4 mythic monster by himself for a short time. Even now, everyone could easily recall his achievements. Guild leader Black Flame, you actually decided to visit WildhammerTown personally? This is truly surprising. To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit? Eight Feathers asked, deliberately dragging his words to buy time. Relying on a bunch of defense turrets and NPC soldiers wouldn't be nearly enough against an expert with mythic-level combat power. They needed to use their guild's trump card, but activating it required time. Since the Starlight Alliance has declared war on Zero Wing, we are here to issue our response and wipe the Starlight Alliance from Star Moon Kingdom's map. Shifeng responded, his tone casual. It was as if he knew that Eight Feathers was trying to buy time and didn't mind at all. Do you think that's really possible with just 1,000 players? Glancing at the time, Eight Feathers grinned and shouted, activate the magic array. Suddenly, a gigantic magic array manifested, enveloping the main street and several adjacent streets. The intruding expert's basic attributes plummeted as the powerful pressure from the array washed over them. This was WildhammerTown's trump card _ a large-scale intermediate magic array that could even survive against a mythic monster's attacks for a considerable amount of time. The enemy players caught within the array would lose at least 20% of their basic attributes. Why not? Shifeng responded by activating Miniature World and Ring of Brilliance. Chapter 2019, Destruction of Wildhammer. The instant Shifeng activated Miniature World and Ring of Brilliance, a silver ripple spread out from him. When the silver ripple passed through the non-Zero Wing members, their bodies immediately felt heavier as their basic attributes decreased. Even their reaction speeds had become slightly sluggish. Meanwhile, this silver ripple quickly engulfed the entire WildhammerTown. What's going on? Why can't I contact the outside world? When the ripple stopped expanding and disappeared, a translucent barrier enveloped the entire WildhammerTown. Some of the players inside the town quickly discovered that communications with the outside world had been completely cut off. They couldn't even access Star Moon Kingdom's official forums. The Starlight Alliance members present in the town started panicking. Not only were their basic attributes and physique heavily suppressed, but they were also rendered incommunicado. They naturally wouldn't be able to ask for reinforcements and could only deal with the 1,000 giant players, who suddenly had their attributes enhanced, all by themselves. They were already at an absolute disadvantage even when fighting against the giants in their normal state. Now that the gap in attributes had been further widened. Alright, I won't mind if anyone else inside the town wishes to help the Starlight Alliance. Now, let's start a delightful fight. Shifeng said as he swept a glance at the various independent players and adventurer teams, who were showing hints of wanting to take action. Although Shifeng did not speak that loudly, it would be hard for everyone not to hear him as the street was deathly silent right now. The various independent players and adventurer team members involuntarily avoided his gaze, their eyes wide with fear. Amazing. With just a few words, black flames scared the players that were planning to take advantage of the situation into inaction. Of course. After seeing all the cards Zero Wing has revealed thus far, in addition to hearing Black Flame's calm tone, who would dare make an enemy out of Zero Wing now? As expected of Zero Wing's guild leader. With his charisma and intelligence, the Starlight Alliance will definitely have their hands full dealing with Zero Wing. With this, the Starlight Alliance will most likely have a difficult time getting the players inside the town to help out. When the upper echelon of the various guilds that were not part of the Starlight Alliance saw this scene, they felt great admiration for Shifeng. At the same time, their wariness of Zero Wing also further increased. At this moment, 8 Feathers, who had reached the battlefield, waved his hand. Immediately, several players hidden along the street took out Tier 3 large-scale destruction magic scrolls and aimed the scrolls at Shifeng. In the next moment, gigantic magic arrays bloomed above the main street, one after another. Black Flame. Pay for your arrogance. 8 Feathers shouted as he glared at Shifeng and the other members of Zero Wing. Attack. 9 Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells activated simultaneously, the AoE of the spells covering the entire main street. The power of the spells was much greater than the attacks of the defense turrets. Shields also wouldn't be effective against these spells, MTs could only endure them. Even if the giant shield warriors activated their life-saving skills and survived this combined attack, they would most likely have very little HP remaining. As for Shifeng, even if the swordsman was more amazing, he would not be able to kill the 9 players activating the 9 magic scrolls within the scroll's short activation time. The 9 gigantic magic arrays in the sky immediately released a blinding glow and started rapidly sucking up the mana available in WildhammerTown's main street. However, even after seeing that the 9 Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells were about to activate, Shifeng still showed no intention of dodging. Instead, he merely waved his hand casually. Forbidden Domain. A gray ripple spread out from Shifeng and shattered the magic arrays in the sky, allowing the rampaging mana to calm down. Following which, the 9 large-scale destruction spells vanished without accomplishing anything. What? Why does he have a large-scale silencing domain? Like rampaging wild beasts, the several Tier 2 giant berserkers who had activated Power of Darkness were capable of killing over a dozen players with a single attack. Even the level 80, Tier 2 NPCs received a one-sided beating when going up against them. Presented with this scene, the spectating independent players did not dare to leave their current positions, deeply afraid of attracting the attention of these violent giant players. As for the adventurer teams and members of small guilds that were previously planning to take advantage of the situation to attack Zero Wing, they had given up entirely on their thoughts. They also celebrated the fact that they had not hastily taken action. Before the players inside WildhammerTown could recover from their shock, Zero Wing's giant players had already charged into Knight's Judgment's heavily fortified residence, destroyed the guild flag located on the first underground floor, and obtained WildhammerTown's town order. With this, the Starlight Alliance had lost all control over WildhammerTown. Chapter 2020, Great Changes Starmoon Kingdom, Witch's Hill. Due to indications that Zero Wing would take action, many of the Starlight Alliance's members had gathered a short distance away from Zero Wing City and were grinding there, thoroughly sealing off the paths leading from the city, while quietly awaiting Zero Wing's next move. However, standing atop a hill a short distance away from Zero Wing's city, Shadowlight Axe, the guild leader of Knight's Judgment, was currently confused and agitated. Just a short while ago, he had suddenly received news that Knight's Judgment had lost control over WildhammerTown. Moreover, this was directly announced into the ears of every guild member of Knight's Judgment. Guild System: Zero Wing has captured WildhammerTown's town order. WildhammerTown will no longer be under Knight's Judgment's jurisdiction. Guild popularity reduced by 2,000. Although Shifeng's miniature world sealed off the communications of players caught within the skill's AoE, it could not prevent the release of the notification of the guild town's capture. As long as one was a member of Knight's Judgment, they would immediately receive news of WildhammerTown's capture. This could be considered a morale punishment toward a guild that failed to defend its town. WildhammerTown got captured? How is this possible? What did Zero Wing do? The sudden notification threw Knight's Judgment's members for a loop. WildhammerTown was a town their guild had fortified heavily. Just the players garrisoning the town numbered over 20,000. There were also more than 24 static defenses built in the town, as well as thousands of NPC soldiers. Most importantly, Knight's Judgment had invested a lot of money into building a sturdy wall, which encompassed the entire town and prevented players from vaulting over it. The only way to get into the town was by destroying the wall. However, doing so would be extremely difficult. Even 100 Tier 2 players targeting a single section of the wall would need to launch numerous attacks to reduce the wall's durability by just 1 point. Even if Zero Wing's members had war weapons like cannons, they should still take quite some time to breach the wall. Hence, Knight's Judgment's members found it truly hard to imagine that such a W11 fortified town could actually be captured, and within only a short time. At this moment, confusion plagued the entire Knight's Judgment. Even Shadowlight Axe, who had experienced countless trials and tribulations, wore an ashen complexion, a cold glint flashing across his eyes. Guild leader, let's rush back to WildhammerTown now. We can't let Zero Wing get away with this so easily, a level 59, Tier 2 male cleric urged anxiously. Even if a guild town's town order were snatched, the town would not immediately switch owners. The ruling guild would simply lose control of the town. If the ruling guild could snatch the town order back within an hour, the town would promptly return to the ruling guild's control. No, we're out of time for that, Shadowlight Axe said as he shook his head in frustration. What we need to do now is head immediately to Warring Empire's Golden Flow town. Also, look into how Zero Wing managed to capture WildhammerTown. Afterward, we'll discuss with the rest of the Alliance how we should proceed. Nowadays, WildhammerTown was Knight's Judgment's main support. It was precisely because of WildhammerTown's existence that Knight's Judgment received a large amount of funding, gaining an advantage over the other major powers. Without WildhammerTown, Knight's Judgment's position would plummet into oblivion. If it were possible to take back WildhammerTown's town order, he, too, wished to do so. However, Knight's Judgment's main army was currently far from WildhammerTown. With their ability to teleport to the town robbed, they would need over an hour to reach WildhammerTown even if they took the shortest route and traveled non-stop by mount. Not to mention, there were also plenty of high-level monsters on the way there. Understood. I'll contact the other guilds of the Alliance. The male cleric had no choice but to nod in agreement with Shadowlight Axe's words. Although he felt unreconciled to simply letting Zero Wing gain WildhammerTown, he was helpless. Meanwhile, news of Zero Wing capturing WildhammerTown spread like wildfire across the entire Starmoon Kingdom. After all, the matter of a guild town falling was staggering news that could not be kept a secret. Not to mention, the various large guilds and adventurer teams of Starmoon Kingdom were all paying close attention to the situation at the Witch's Hill. Are you kidding me? That WildhammerTown actually fell to Zero Wing? What did Zero Wing do? Could this information be fake? When the players of Starmoon Kingdom found out about this matter, their first reaction was denial. After all, how could such a well-fortified town fall so easily? Moreover, Zero Wing had captured the town so quickly that almost no news about it had leaked beforehand. The only thing everyone knew before this was that Zero Wing had suddenly gathered 1,000 Tier 2 experts. However, what could 1,000 Tier 2 experts possibly do against a guild town? It would be sheer suicide to attack a guild town with such a small force. Just the NPC soldiers inside the town would be more than enough to kill these experts. Meanwhile, the news of Zero Wing suddenly capturing WildhammerTown sent the ferment in Star Moon Kingdom into an immediate and rapid cooldown. The various major powers automatically took a step back and started observing the situation more carefully. After all, if Zero Wing was capable of capturing even a WH-fortified town like WildhammerTown, then it was definitely more than capable of capturing the guild towns of smaller guilds like theirs. I really underestimated Zero Wing. To think it would capture WildhammerTown so quickly. No wonder Zero Wing dares to resist Blackwater. Snow Scar, who currently stood inside one of the 4 towers of elements, was surprised to receive news about this sudden development. Commander, are we going to give up on destroying the 4 towers of elements? Then, a level 60, Tier 2 assassin asked in a quiet tone. Let's wait a little while longer and see what actions the Starlight Alliance takes. The Alliance has suffered a considerable setback with the loss of WildhammerTown. It definitely won't be able to sit still and do nothing. It will take some sort of action. And when it does, we'll have our opportunity, Snow Scar replied, chuckling. The main reason why the Starlight Alliance was able to develop so rapidly in the Witch's Hill was the 2 guild towns it controlled. Now that the number of guild towns it controlled had been halved, if the Alliance still refused to take action, there would be only one outcome. The resources available in a single town wouldn't be enough for so many corporations to share. It also wouldn't be enough for the various member guilds of the Alliance. At that time, some corporations and guilds would choose to withdraw from the Alliance. Eventually, the Starlight Alliance would naturally disappear from Star Moon Kingdom. Snow Scar had to admit that Zero Wing was truly vicious to deal such a fatal blow to the Starlight Alliance. Of course, achieving what Zero Wing achieved was also extremely difficult, to begin with. Witch's Hill, Golden Flow Town. Due to WildhammerTown's capture, the entire Starlight Alliance was currently in chaos. After receiving a call from Shadowlight Axe, the representatives of every member guild had gathered in Warring Empire's residence to hold an emergency meeting. Zero Wing is truly ruthless. With this single move, it silenced the entire kingdom. As things stand, we'll have a much more difficult time locking down the Million Forest, Wind Cloud, Sin Realm's representative and a Tier 2 assassin, said. Turning to Shadowlight Axe, he smiled and asked, do you have any thoughts on this or any information to report? Don't tell me you still haven't found out a single thing about what happened in WildhammerTown even now. Aside from being one of Sin Realm's 7 great experts, Wind Cloud was also the most famous assassin in the Purple Thorns Kingdom. Many experts and guild leaders of first-rate guilds had fallen at his hands before he joined Sin Realm. Only after suffering defeat at Lone Beacon's hands did he join Sin Realm. My side has already received a report on what happened in WildhammerTown. According to the report, Zero Wing raided WildhammerTown suddenly by means of teleportation. Although only 1,000 people were teleported into the town, these 1,000 people were no ordinary players. Chapter 2021, Sudden Appearance in Golden Flow Town. After the jittery berserker reported what was happening outside the residence, the entire meeting room fell silent. How is this possible? Why would Zero Wing's members be here? Didn't they just capture WildhammerTown? Are you sure you saw correctly? This sudden development stupefied everyone inside the meeting room. Their minds simply could not process this turn of events. Even though the reporting berserker had already explained things clearly, they still found an attack on Golden Flow Town inconceivable. Zero Wing had just fought a battle in WildhammerTown. No matter how powerful Zero Wing's giant players were, they would definitely have suffered some losses. Meanwhile, only a little over 2 hours had passed since Zero Wing captured WildhammerTown. Logically, Zero Wing should be prioritizing taking over of WildhammerTown instead of launching another attack. Zero Wing's unconventional way of doing things messed up their original plans. We haven't even gone to reclaim WildhammerTown, yet Zero Wing is already knocking on our doors? Wind Cloud revealed a playful smile at this situation. Zero Wing is too arrogant. As soon as it captured WildhammerTown, it is trying to take Golden Flow Town. Is Zero Wing planning on annihilating the Starlight Alliance in one fell swoop? Shadowlight Axe, on the other hand, revealed a dark expression. In his opinion, the main reason why Zero Wing was able to capture WildhammerTown before was the Starlight Alliance's ignorance of the existence of the giant players and of Zero Wing's ability to teleport 1,000 players directly into a town. Had the Alliance known about these things and prepared beforehand, Zero Wing wouldn't have been able to take down WildhammerTown at all. Zero Wing most likely doesn't know that we have already gathered our combat power in Golden Flow Town and is launching a preemptive strike, Skyview said, frowning as a hint of rage flashed across his eyes. Hurriedly, he turned to the reporting berserker and ordered, "Relay my commands. Have every expert in the guild gather in Golden Flow Town. I want Zero Wing's visit here to be a one-way trip. However, it is best if we proceed with caution. We should not take Black Flame lightly. He might have some trap set up for us," Wind Cloud cautioned. WildhammerTown and Golden Flow Town served as the Starlight Alliance's foundation. Even the loss of one could push the Alliance to the brink of annihilation. If both towns were lost, the Starlight Alliance would be done for. Hence, they needed to be extra careful in this upcoming battle. This is certain. I will have everyone in Star Moon Kingdom understand that Zero Wing is already old news. The future Star Moon Kingdom will belong to the Starlight Alliance. Skyview said, sneering. Gather every monster player inside the town. Prepare all the war weapons and magic scrolls we have. Let's go and meet Zero Wing. Let's hope that's the case, Wind Cloud muttered in exasperation. He felt that Skyview wasn't listening to him at all. However, he also had to admit that the current Golden Flow Town was quite unlike the lightly defended WildhammerTown of before, what with the Starlight Alliance's upper echelon, experts, and elites all gathered here. Afterward, the Starlight Alliance's upper echelon went into action, ordering their guild experts to gather at Golden Flow Town. At the same time, they also had their subordinates, who were already in town, form an encirclement around Zero Wing's giant players, to prevent Zero Wing from wreaking havoc on the town. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's 1,000 giant players were already engaged in battle all over Golden Flow Town. Due to the effects of Miniature World and Ring of Brilliance, the Starlight Alliance's members and NPC soldiers were at a total disadvantage. Giants sent players flying all around. Craters pocked the various streets. Rather than a battle between players, this scene looked more like a monster siege instead. The independent players inside the town could not help but be stunned upon seeing this scene. The strength and defense that Zero Wing's giant players possessed were absurd. The town's level 80 NPC soldiers were simply a joke before these giants. However, under the commands of the Starlight Alliance's upper echelon, a defensive encirclement quickly formed around Zero Wing's members. Multiple teams led by Tier 2 experts started using magic arrays to suppress the giant players and then engaged these giant players in battle. Among the various teams, the ones led by guild upper echelons possessed the greatest strength. Not only were these teams composed entirely of Tier 2 players, but every team member was also an expert that was capable of reaching the late stage of the Trial Tower's 5th floor at the very least. Due to the assistance of magic barriers, these experts could cooperate with each other to take advantage of the giant players' slow movement speed and reaction speed. Each expert team could go up against several giant players at a time. The teams led by the Starlight Alliance's 4 strongest powers performed even more fiercely. Wielding a flaming, magic staff, Skyview, Warring Empire's guild leader, released one fire-type spell after another, the power of each spell rivaling that of Tier 3 spells. Moreover, his attacks were extremely fast, a perfect counter to the slow giant players. All by himself, Skyview managed to deplete a Tier 2 giant player's HP in just a dozen seconds or so. After battling for around 3 minutes, Skyview's 100-man team killed a giant team made up of a dozen or so giant players. Skyview then led his team to patch up the holes that had formed in the defensive encirclement, preventing other giant teams from advancing. However, although the Starlight Alliance's upper echelon teams performed well against the giant players, their efforts were negligible, as they could cover only so much ground at a time. The corpses of the Starlight Alliance's members filled many other locations in the town. Zero Wing. Skyview's complexion turned very ugly as he looked at the corpses of his guildmates strewn across the street he stood on. In the name of the warring empire, I definitely will not let any of you leave this place alive. This situation was simply horrible. Every warring empire member currently fighting in the town was an elite player at the very minimum. Among them, many were even expert players. These players were the mainstays of the guild. With so many of these elite and expert players dying, Warring Empire would need a very long time to recover afterward. At this moment, the other guild upper echelons were also experiencing the might of the giant players and Shifeng's miniature world. This situation was indeed outside of their expectations. Brother Wind, are you still not ready? Skyview asked through a call with Wind Cloud. It's done. Wind Cloud, who was currently holding a ceremony in Warring Empire's residence, replied, smiling. As soon as Wind Cloud said so, the sky above Golden Flow Town suddenly darkened. At the same time, the 5,000 level 50+ players taking part in the ceremony in the residence disintegrated instantly, their bodies transforming into pitch-black smoke that gathered in the sky. Afterward, the smoke started descending in streams, one after another. Upon reaching the ground, each stream of smoke took on a humanoid shape. Even the weakest among these humanoid gas lifeforms was a level 70 Great Lord, with several among them being level 70+ Grand Lords. These gas lifeforms easily numbered in the hundreds. Moreover, the eyes of every one of these smoke monsters shone with intelligence. In addition to the appearance of these smoke monsters, the suppression effect of Miniature World also vanished without a trace. This move was none other than Sin Realm's strongest trump card, Death's Praise. It was a super rare epic item that could be used only once every 10 days. This move from Sin Realm is amazing. The smoke monsters astonished Roaring Flame, who was commanding the members of the War Riders. Even an army of 3,000 Tier 2 players would most likely fall if attacked by so many of these smoke monsters. Good. Everyone, tighten the encirclement and kill every giant player in sight. Skyview commanded. Without the suppression of Miniature World, even the Great Lord-ranked smoke monsters would be able to go toe-to-toe against the giant players. As for the Grand Lords, they possessed combat power superior to the giant players, and there were more than 50 of these Grand Lords. After just a short moment, Zero Wing's giant players started getting pushed back. Now, these giant players no longer dared to operate in parties or small teams, as they would be killed off easily if they did so. Zero Wing sure is gullible. Does it really think it can take down Golden Flow Town as easily as it did WildhammerTown, using just 1,000 players? Since Zero Wing dares to look down on our Starlight Alliance, we should teach Zero Wing's members the consequences of overreaching. I'm really looking forward to the expression of regret Black Flame is going to make. After this battle, I'll definitely compile a close-up video of this battle and post it onto the official forums for him. While the Starlight Alliance's upper echelons were merrily chatting among themselves, the Starlight Alliance's army cornered Zero Wing's forces at the town's central plaza. At this moment, only a little over 700 giant players stood in the central plaza. Standing among these giant players was a cloaked man carrying 2 exquisite longswords at his waist. The cloaked man was currently observing the situation with a calm gaze. Meanwhile, this cloaked man was none other than Black Flame, a person everyone in Starmoon Kingdom was familiar with. Guild leader Black Flame. I'm sure you never thought that such a day would come for you, right? Skyview said excitedly as he looked at Shifeng. Unfortunately, it is too late for regrets. Everyone, charge. Let guild leader Black Flame know how laughable his arrogance is. While Skyview and Shadowlight Axe watched Sherfong warily, Roaring Flame and Wind Cloud had arrived with their respective teams. Black Flame. We've sealed off all paths out of this plaza. You and your guild members have no hope of escape. Wind Cloud shouted, smiling faintly at Sherfong. The town only had 6 paths that led to the central plaza, and the Starlight Alliance's monster players had blocked all 6. Moreover, they had used a spatial seal to lock down Golden Flow Town, preventing players from using teleportation skills or tools. Not even Tier 3 instantaneous movement magic scrolls would be effective within the seal. Now, all they had to do was eliminate Sherfong and his giant players. The seal's complete already? Skyview could not help his grin after hearing Wind Cloud's declaration. Guild leader Black Flame, it would seem that today, you will finally fall. Are you going to hand your life over obediently? Or should we take our time with killing you? Make your choice. If Sherfang's giant players had any hope of fleeing Golden Flow Town before, the Starlight Alliance's players had dashed it. Now that the seal was in place, it was only a matter of time before Sherfong and his force fell. Skyview, why are you wasting your words on him? Why don't we just kill him? Shadowlight Axe asked. What a pity. I really wanted an exciting battle, but I guess that won't be possible. Roaring Flame sighed as he glanced at the eager crowd around him. Black Flame, how can you appear so calm in the face of death? Truly arrogant. Skyview was displeased with what he saw as he watched Sherfong, who still maintained his composure. He then laughed and ridiculed, or is the almighty guild leader Black Flame scared stiff? Do you think you can turn the tables by using the same large-scale destruction spell you used in WildhammerTown? Even if you do, it will be futile. We aren't going to stand still and let you destroy us. Even with that spell, we won't let you accomplish anything here. The Starlight Alliance members nodded in agreement. They then began to spread out. When they had learned about the means Zero Wing had used to capture WildhammerTown, they had organized appropriate countermeasures. They had divided their main combat power into several groups. They would not let Zero Wing destroy their main combatants so easily again. It seems that everyone is here now, Sherfong said as he eyed the hundreds of monster players and smoke monsters around him. In a mild tone, he continued, in that case, let's begin the real battle. Still so calm in the face of death. Do you truly think that you have a chance? Black Flame, your arrogance ends here. Get out of the way. I'll hack him down with my axe. The Starlight Alliance's upper echelons were enraged when they heard Sherfang's reply. They clearly had the upper hand, yet Sherfong remained defiant. However, as the Starlight Alliance's ranged members moved within 40 yards of the swordsmen, beginning to cast their spells and knock their arrows, Sherfong pulled a crimson globe from his bag. Suddenly, a colossal magic array formed above the crowd, driving the ambient fire-type mana berserk. In the blink of an eye, the fire-type mana gathered before Sherfong and formed an 8-meter-tall flame dragon. Once the fire spirit took shape, it released a deafening roar. It seems that you're all mistaken about something. I haven't remained here because I couldn't leave. Rather, I've been waiting for you to gather around me. Let me say it again, let's begin the real battle. Chapter 2023, Misconceived Victory. Everyone in the central plaza fell silent as the fire spirit's thunderous roar echoed through the town, its powerful aura making every player feel uncomfortable. However, the pressure they felt wasn't just due to the flame dragon's high level, but also due to the creature's superior life rating. Waiting for us to gather? Are you claiming that you're so much stronger than us? Wind Cloud questioned as he eyed the fire spirit. He then returned his gaze to Sherfong and laughed, saying, since that is the case, show me how this Tier 3 archaic species of yours will defeat our monster army. Smoke monsters, attack. As Wind Cloud gave the command, the humanoid smoke monsters charged past him, running at the fire spirit. These smoke monsters were more like NPCs than ordinary monsters. They did not charge at the fire spirit as a disorderly mob. Rather, they fell into proper offensive formations. 8 level 75 Grand Lord ranked smoke monsters led the charge, smoke pulling away from their forms to create shields and spears. Like a group of hunters chasing after a large beast, they quickly surrounded the flame dragon. Behind these Grand Lords, multiple groups of 10 Great Lord ranked smoke monsters transformed parts of their bodies into longbows. In organized rows, they nocked their arrows and prepared to launch a concentrated attack. Intense killing intent filled the central plaza. A chilling sensation encompassed the players standing close to the monsters. The smoke monsters' formation shocked everyone watching. Even the Starlight Alliance's upper echelons were stupefied. What high intellect! Roaring Flame was just as stunned to see the smoke monsters move like an orderly army. He wasn't incredibly familiar with Sin Realm's trump card. It had been mentioned briefly during the meeting, but he hadn't dreamed that it would be this powerful. Militaristic formations were a large part of the reason that players could defeat a large number of powerful monsters in God's domain. Players would be able to exert greater combat power when they used such tactics than without. This was also why players could fend off monster sieges despite being outnumbered. The weakest of the hundreds of smoke monsters was a level 70 Great Lord. If these smoke monsters worked together and fought like players, they could even defeat a level 80 mythic monster, let alone a level 80, tier 3 archaic species. Good. While these smoke monsters pinned down that dragon, the rest of us will surround and attack Black Flame. Do not let him escape. Skyview commanded. As he watched the smoke monsters inch closer to the fire spirit, he knew that Shifeng's final trump card had been neutralized. He no longer felt threatened by Shifeng's calm exterior. He only needed to concentrate on slaying Shifeng and announcing the Starlight Alliance's victory in Star Moon Kingdom. As Skyview fell silent, he and Shadowlight Axe led a dozen or so Great Lord-ranked monster players to surround Shifeng. The weakest among these players could reach the Trial Tower's 6th floor, and including their powerful attributes, any one of them could hold their ground against a mythic monster of the same level. Die! Skyview shouted as he finished chanting the incantation for a Tier 2 curse. However, before Skyview released his spell, he paused, noticing something that confused him. Despite more than a dozen monster players charging at him, Shifeng's expression hadn't changed. It was as if he viewed these Great Lord-ranked monster players as nothing more than air. Or, perhaps, he was ignoring these players. Even a true Tier 3 expert would feel threatened by so many Great Lord-ranked monster players, yet Shifeng was unfazed. Am I overthinking this? Skyview could not help but wonder if he were being too careful. Meanwhile, Shadowlight Axe and the others moved within 10 yards of the enemy swordsman and launched their attacks. Finally, Shifeng made his move. He hadn't launched his own attacks, yet Shifeng's aura abruptly skyrocketed. With unbelievable speed, the swordsman unsheathed Killing Ray, swinging the blade in a forward slash. Lightning slash. A lightning bolt instantly tore through Shadowlight Axe and his companions. The monster players and their leader lost HP at a horrific rate. After a single attack, Shadowlight Axe collapsed to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The impact threw the dozen or so Great Lord-ranked monster players over 30 yards back as they lost more than a quarter of their HPs. Everyone who saw this was stunned. The Starlight Alliance had carefully selected expert players to become these Great Lord-ranked monster players, yet a single strike had shattered their coordinated assault. Moreover, Shadowlight Axe, the assault's leader, had died instantly. In contrast, Shifeng hadn't received 1 point of damage. In fact, he hadn't even moved from his original position. Die! Skyview growled. He finally realized how terrifying Shifeng truly was, but he still shouted in an attempt to restore his courage. Tier 2 Curse, Flame Blast. This was the most powerful spell Skyview had in his arsenal. When cast with an active berserk skill, even a Grand Lord of the same level would suffer heavy injuries if struck directly. Suddenly, 4 gigantic fireballs appeared around Shifeng, each the size of a small house. These fireballs then descended on their target. The surrounding experts reacted and prepared for Shifeng to evade the attack, but something surprised them. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Shifeng didn't try to dodge the fireballs. He didn't even try to defend himself. Suddenly, 4 sword lights blinded the crowd, carrying enough power to split the 4 fireballs in half. How is this possible? Sky View was dumbfounded as he watched the swordsman slice apart his attack so effortlessly. Before today, he had felt that even the various superpowers old monsters would flee from this attack, but now, he found the idea laughable. He also viewed all of the effort he had spent trying to master the spell as one big joke. The strength to fight monster-level experts? That had only been wishful thinking. However, Skyview didn't know that Shifeng had already reached level 70, wearing equipment that not even Super Guild's guild leaders could dream of equipping. Most importantly, he was currently affected by both the Ring of Brilliance and Heavenly Dragon's power. Not even a level 60 mythic monster could match his strength. Following which, Shifeng appeared before the Great Lord ranked monster players and brandished his 2 swords. After just a few seconds, one of these monster players was dead. What should we do? His strength is too high. He's using his berserk skill. Get away from him for now. Once his berserk skill is over, we can easily take him out. After witnessing Shifeng's performance, the Starlight Alliance's members wondered which side had the real monster. They had never expected to find a normal player that could be this powerful. They had to buy themselves some time. If even the Great Lord ranked monster players were helpless against Shifeng, other players would die instantly if they faced him. Although the Grand Lord ranked smoke monsters had high intellect, they were only monsters. After killing a few Great Lord ranked monster players, Shifeng sensed what the Starlight Alliance was trying to do. At this rate, he'd only be able to kill several dozen monster players before Heavenly Dragon's power ended. Now that I've seen these monsters' strength, it's time to end this battle, Shifeng thought to himself as he surveyed his guild members fighting in the plaza. Although only a short time had passed since the battle in the plaza had begun, Zero Wing had lost a considerable number of lives. Turning back to the Starlight Alliance's upper echelons, Shifeng said, "Since you have no intention of fighting, let's remove Golden Flow Town from the Witch's Hill." Remove? You really think you can accomplish such a thing? Although the Starlight Alliance's members watched Shifeng with fear in their eyes, their gazes still contained a spark of hope. While they were at a disadvantage now, as time passed, the situation would become more favorable for them. Suddenly, Shifeng snapped his fingers. The fire spirit, which had been battling the smoke monster army, abruptly transformed into a small fire and appeared above Shifeng's head. A complex chant reached the surrounding players, increasing the town's mana density. The various superpowers hadn't viewed the fire spirit as such a strategic item, even fearing it, in the past due to its prowess, but because of the number of fire-type large and super-large-scale destruction spells it wielded. No! Stop him! Skyview yelled in panic, turning deathly pale when he saw the 2 gigantic magic arrays forming in the sky. He could sense the power in those spells, and he knew they could rival the power of Tier 4, large-scale destruction spells. Before anyone could react, massive fireballs, easily dwarfing the one Skyview's flame blast had created, fell from one of the arrays above the plaza, one after another. At the same time, a raging inferno erupted beneath the second magic array. In the blink of an eye, a fiery hell engulfed Golden Flow Town. Chapter 2024, Golden Flow Town falls Witch's Hill, Zero Wing City. Due to Zero Wing's successful capture of WildhammerTown, merchant and independent players began to return to Zero Wing City. Players hawked their wares and recruited team members for grinding and questing across the city. Many were even Tier 2 experts. At this point, not even Starmoon City or White River City could rival Zero Wing City's prosperity. Meanwhile, Starmoon Kingdom's various guilds, both large and small, began to send teams to investigate Zero Wing within its city. This increased the traffic in the city's bars and restaurants. Several cloaked players stood on the street outside of one of Zero Wing City's advanced bars, warily eyeing their surroundings. They only entered the bar after ensuring that they were safe. Players crowded the bar, most wearing black cloaks. If a player used a skill that could see through a black cloak's concealment, they'd discover that the cloaked players within weren't independent players. Rather, they were from the kingdom's various guilds, and they were all impressively powerful, with the weakest being a level 58, Tier 2 player. To survive in God's domain, small guilds generally formed secret alliances to withstand larger guilds. These guilds would exchange information to further their development, as well. This advanced bar had become a hub for these guild members to do just that. Meanwhile, the new group of cloaked players quickly headed for a corner of the bar after entering, approaching a stone table with a single occupant. After taking a seat, the Tier 2 female elementalist that led the group looked at the assassin with a tattoo on his face and asked, "How is your investigation going? Have you learned how Zero Wing captured WildhammerTown yet?" Unlike the majority of the players in the bar, this assassin did not bother to hide his identity, boldly revealing his status as an independent player. However, despite doing so, none of the guild players present dared to look down on him. This independent player was the host of this information center, the middleman for the information gatherers and buyers. He specialized in information on Zero Wing, in particular. The various guild players acknowledged this assassin as a middleman because he was also a player from Green Eye, a top adventurer team in God's domain. Unlike other adventurer teams, Green Eye focused on information gathering. Not only were its members skilled in combat, but they also possessed plenty of connections. The information they sold was always legitimate, so the various guilds trusted the team's members. Of course, as Green Eye's manpower was limited, it didn't collect information on every guild. It generally focused on first-rate or stronger guilds. Second-rate guilds and below didn't qualify for its attention. But we will only accept coins or magic crystals as payment. We'll give you a 10% discount if you pay with magic crystals, the Tier 2 assassin said, sipping from the cup of wine he held as he eyed the female elementalist before him. "How much?" she asked. The Green Eye Adventurer team usually accepted credits for its information, but since this information was particularly valuable, it would only accept coins or magic crystals this time. In God's domain, accomplishing anything required strength. Adventurer teams only earned credits if they were powerful enough, and to develop a team's strength, it was only natural that it charged coins or magic crystals. 500 gold, the assassin replied. 500? Isn't this a little much? When they heard the assassin's price, the few players behind the elementalist objected. At this stage of the game, 500 gold was an astronomical amount, even to expert players. Individual experts would be lucky if they obtained a weapon or equipment piece that could sell for more than 10 gold. Anything more valuable than that would be extremely difficult for individual players to get their hands on. 500 gold was a significant amount to any guild, yet the Green Eye Adventurer team demanded so much just for some information. This was simply extortion. It's not such a high price. Cruel Sword, the Assassin's Alliance's guild leader, even ranked on the God's Domain's experts list. If not for Zero Wing's several great experts overshadowing him, Cruel Sword would have been relatively famous in Star Moon Kingdom. When they saw Cruel Sword's face, the various guild players in the bar stopped treating his claim as a joke. Now, they only had respect for his words. "Thank you for your warning, Guild Leader Sword." Cleansed Rue, who still wore her black cloak, expressed her gratitude. "It's nothing." Vice Guild Leader Rue is being overly polite, Cruel Sword responded quietly. "However, I'm certainly surprised that the 100 Flowers Palace wants to develop in Star Moon Kingdom." Meanwhile, the instant Cruel Sword revealed her identity, Cleansed Rue's expression became vigilant. However, she quickly realized that he had simply used an advanced identification skill. Obtaining such a skill wasn't difficult in a top-tier second-rate guild. She immediately relaxed her guard. "We have no other choice." "I'm sure you've heard of the 100 Flowers Palace's current predicament," Cleansed Rue said grimly, her mood souring as she mentioned her guild struggles. Ah, that's right, it's truly a pity. Cruel Sword lowered his head and fell silent. But Guild Leader Sword, you are impressive. Not only have you led the Assassins' Alliance to flourish in Starmoon Kingdom, but your guild's performance in the Twin Towers Kingdom has also been noteworthy, Cleansed Rue said with a hint of admiration in her gaze. Her eyes also held a flash of anticipation. Are you here to sell some information on the powers in the Twin Towers Kingdom? The 100 Flowers Palace is willing to purchase the information for a high price. The palace had also intended to develop in the Twin Towers Kingdom and had investigated the situation there, but the guild hadn't invested significant resources yet, focusing on securing the hidden class, Demon Blade Knight, by slaying abyssal monsters. Now that the situation in Starmoon Kingdom had reached this point, the 100 Flowers Palace had no hope of developing in the kingdom. If Zero Wing were able to crush a local power like the Starlight Alliance so decisively, eliminating a foreign power would be child's play. If the 100 Flowers Palace tried to establish itself in Starmoon Kingdom, it would face utter annihilation. No power would tolerate others in its territory, where resources were limited. Otherwise, God's domain's various powers wouldn't compete so desperately. Hence, the Twin Towers Kingdom was the palace's last hope. The Twin Towers Kingdom was in chaos due to the threat of abyssal monsters. Even so, quite a few powers contested for control of the kingdom. Meanwhile, the Assassins' Alliance was one of the few outstanding performers in the battle for prominence, but the guild had only focused on developing in maps near Starmoon Kingdom. Information on the Twin Towers Kingdom? Glancing around him, Cruel Sword replied, "This isn't the place for that discussion. Let's head to one of the rooms upstairs." He had already attracted the crowd's attention in the bar, and although others couldn't listen to their private discussion, there was the possibility that one of these players possessed a special skill that would allow them to do so. Cleansed Rue nodded, understanding that the bar was too public for their talk. Cruel Sword and Cleansed Rue then left for a VIP room on the second floor alongside their subordinates. Although the VIP room was not large, its design was magnificent, and it could easily accommodate more than a dozen people. Guild Leader Sword, let's be straightforward. If you are willing to sell detailed information on the Twin Towers Kingdom, we're willing to offer you 5 pieces of epic equipment, Cleansed Rue said as soon as she took a seat. The 100 Flowers Palace is truly a first-rate guild. Even after falling so far, it still has such a stable foundation, Cruel Sword commended, surprised. Obtaining a single piece of epic equipment was incredibly difficult, and despite the Assassins' Alliance's recent achievements, the guild had fewer than 20 epic items. The guild treated these items as their foundation, refusing to sell them under any circumstances. We offer the price because the Assassins' Alliance is worth it. Do you agree to our offer, Guild Leader Sword? Cleansed Rue asked, smiling. The Assassins' Alliance's performance in the Twin Towers Kingdom had been exceptional. It operated alongside quite a few first-rate guilds, and the fact that the Assassins' Alliance had laid claim to a significant portion of the kingdom, despite its second-rate status, was astounding. Without enough strength and understanding of the kingdom, accomplishing such a feat would have been impossible. I understand your determination to develop in the Twin Towers Kingdom, Cruel Sword said. I'll talk to Zero Wing about this matter, but I can't guarantee that the guild will agree to a meeting. After Cleansed Rue and Cruel Sword finished their discussion, Cleansed Rue left the bar with her subordinates and made their way to Zero Wing's residence. She was in such a hurry because of the fact that the Twin Towers Kingdom was the best hope for the 100 Flowers Palace, and the guild didn't have much time left. The longer they delayed shifting their base of operations, the more their guild would suffer. As Cleansed Rue and her entourage walked through Zero Wing's city streets, they noticed that the news of Zero Wing's dominance in Golden Flow Town had already spread throughout the city. Excitement filled the air, and the merchant players were particularly lively. They found it hard to imagine that not long ago, an intense killing intent had enveloped Zero Wing City. There are so many merchant players and Tier 2 players here. Zero Wing City has almost caught up to Dark Knight City. This city may not be a match for Dark Knight City yet, but the political situation in Dark Knight City is chaotic. On the other hand, Zero Wing has full control of its city. That's true. It really makes you wonder how strong Zero Wing actually is. Zero Wing's city is already so impressive, and the guild has so much influence in the Black Dragon and/or empires. It even has influence in the Twin Towers Kingdom. The 100 Flowers Palace's upper echelons, who rode an advanced horse carriage, gained a newfound appreciation for Zero Wing as they watched players roam the city streets. They had never considered that Zero Wing had hidden so much of its power. They hadn't expected that their guild, a bona fide first-rate guild, would have to cooperate with Zero Wing to continue its existence in God's domain either. Do you think that Zero Wing will agree to work with our guild? A female cleric asked worriedly, gripping a wooden staff in her hands. The 100 Flowers Palace is a first-rate guild. Even though we have fallen from our peak, we are still much stronger than any ordinary guild. If Zero Wing wants to secure more resources from the Twin Towers Kingdom, why wouldn't it agree to cooperate? A bearded, middle-aged man stated confidently. Well, you're not exactly wrong. Although the female cleric wanted to offer a retort, she held back. Zero Wing had the ability to produce a magic array that could repel abyssal monsters. In other words, Zero Wing had the initiative. And while Zero Wing could cooperate with many other guilds, the guild was the 100 Flowers Palace's only hope. Alright, enough talking. We've arrived. Cleansed Rue also knew how disadvantageous the palace's current position was, and she was just as worried as her companion. Once the horse carriage rolled to a stop, she disembarked. Their carriage had stopped before the main entrance to Zero Wing's residence. When Cleansed Rue and her subordinates left the carriage, they were stupefied by the scene before them. Hundreds of 4-meter-tall players stood beyond the main threshold, all of which had reached level 60. They also wore level 55+, top-tier equipment, and some even sported pieces of level 60 fine gold equipment. Their auras were so intense that even peak experts like Cleansed Rue and her entourage couldn't help but shudder. However, these giants weren't the most eye-catching scene within the residence. Rather, what caught Cleansed Rue's attention were the 8, 2-story-tall, crimson tanks parked within. These crimson tanks were none other than the rumored Hell tanks. However, Zero Wing had used these Hell tanks constantly in the Ore Empire, and they weren't easy to move elsewhere. In other words, these 8 Hell tanks weren't the war weapons that defended Silverwing Town. Zero Wing had only recently built these tanks. While Cleansed Rue and the others stared at the war weapons in astonishment, a beautiful woman in luxurious clothing approached. When they saw this woman, the representatives from the 100 Flowers Palace couldn't help but gasp. Their reaction hadn't been a result of witnessing the woman's elegance and beauty, but because of her level and equipment. Not only was she a level 61, Tier 2 summoner, but she actually possessed 3 pieces of epic equipment. And they had never heard of this woman before. Hello, you must be from the 100 Flowers Palace, correct? I am Youlan, Zero Wing City's trade manager. Our guild leader has heard of your situation from guild leader Cruel Sword, Youlan said as she beamed an elegant smile at Cleansed Rue's group. Please, follow me. Chapter 2027, Obscure Experts. When Cleansed Rue and the others saw Youlan and felt the powerful pressure she radiated, they could not help their surprise. No matter how they looked at it, a level 61, Tier 2 player with 3 pieces of epic equipment should be well known. The highest level players in God's domain's various empires had only reached level 61. Even the Dark Knight Empire only had 5 of these experts. She must be one of Zero Wing's hidden peak experts, the Tier 2 female cleric from the 100 Flowers Palace said through the team chat. I agree. With her level and equipment, she is definitely on the level of Zero Wing's Fire Dance, the middle-aged Tier 2 berserker agreed, nodding. The rest of the team nodded, as well. God's domain's various guilds generally hid some of their power, including the 100 Flowers Palace. However, unlike Zero Wing, the palace hadn't hidden an expert as powerful as Youlan. Reserving such an expert would be a waste. But when they considered Zero Wing's stealthy presence in so many locations, they realized that it wasn't strange to hide a peak expert. When they remembered the 8 new hell tanks sitting in the residence, as well, goosebumps erupted across their arms. They had learned some details about those hell tanks, and they knew that each tank was the equivalent of a mobile defense turret. Moreover, the hell tank's defensive and melee capabilities were far beyond defense turrets, yet 8 of these tanks were stationed within Zero Wing's residence. Alright, enough. Let's prepare to enter Zero Wing's residence. Don't forget that you represent the 100 Flowers Palace. Once we're inside, do not do anything that would sully the guild's reputation. Cleansed Rue said, expressing her dissatisfaction with her teammates' actions. After lecturing her team, she followed Youlan into the residence. As a residence within a guild territory, Zero Wing's residence was far more spacious than those normally found in NPC cities. Not only did the residence have far more facilities than normal, but its mana density was even higher than elsewhere. It felt pleasant just to walk through the residence's halls. The 100 Flowers Palace's members also discovered a change to their double EXP Biyao accumulation bars, located directly beneath their experience bars. Amazing! Players can actually accumulate the double EXP buff so quickly here. Although players would start to accumulate the double EXP buff the moment they entered Zero Wing City, they could only accumulate 20% after a 48-hour stay. However, players would accumulate 30% after resting in the residence for the same amount of time. Visiting the residence was 50% more effective than just visiting the city. Even in first-rate guilds, very few players enjoyed such an astounding accumulation rate. After all, a guild hall only had a limited number of private rooms, and only the guild's expert members were usually allowed to rent the rooms for GCPs. Accumulate 20% after a 48-hour stay. However, players would accumulate 30% after resting in the residence for the same amount of time. Visiting the residence was 50% more effective than just visiting the city. Even in first-rate guilds, very few players enjoyed such an astounding accumulation rate. After all, a guild hall only had a limited number of private rooms, and only the guild's expert members were usually allowed to rent the rooms for GCPs. As Cleansed Rue and her companions entered the guild hall, yet another spectacular scene greeted them. Zero Wing members filled the first-floor hall, all of which were level 57 or higher. These players' levels were on par with first-rate guilds' expert members. Furthermore, even if they ignored the giant players, there were hundreds of Tier 2 players in the hall. The number of Tier 2 experts within Zero Wing City was almost half as many Tier 2 players in 100 Flowers Palace. Now, they only felt an immense pressure. Welcome to our residence, friends from the 100 Flowers Palace. I've heard that you have something you wish to discuss with me. May I know what it is about? Shifeng, who sat in the guild leader's seat, asked Cleansed Rue and the others. Chapter 2030, Puppet Production. Star Moon Kingdom, White River City. As Shifeng left the crowded teleportation hall, he sensed that the city's atmosphere had changed. During his last visit, a depressing energy and dense killing intent had fallen over the city. Now, however, excitement almost crackled in the air. Far fewer guild players wandered the city streets, replaced by far more adventurer team players than before. As Shifeng wandered through the city, he could hear players discussing the recent events in the Witch's Hill. Zero Wing is so amazing. It captured 2 of the Starlight Alliance's guild towns, back to back. Not even the various superpowers have accomplished such a feat. Who would have thought that Zero Wing had such a powerful foundation? After its defeat, the Starlight Alliance disbanded. The corporations supporting it have already pulled out their investments. I don't think it'll be long before Zero Wing removed the guilds that participated in the alliance from the kingdom. Who told those guilds to be so arrogant and make an enemy of Zero Wing? Didn't they see how Zero Wing became Star Moon Kingdom's overlord in the first place? They're just reaping what they sow. I know, right? I've heard that Zero Wing's giant players were responsible for capturing both guild towns. They're 4 meters tall and have immeasurable strength. Their defense is off the charts, too. The town's defense turrets barely left a scratch on them. With Zero Wing's home ground advantage, who would dare provoke the guild in the Witch's Hill now? It really makes you wonder how Zero Wing managed to convert so many players into giants. I wish I could become a giant player, too. Isn't that simple? Just join Zero Wing. Since Zero Wing can convert so many players into giants, it's natural that it can do so with even more players. The conversion price is the only concern now. That's right. After its victory in the Witch's Hill, independent players in the kingdom are rushing to join Zero Wing in the hopes of securing a conversion slot. Although living in human cities will be inconvenient after joining a neutral race, the combat power you get in return is definitely worth it. Moreover, once we reach higher levels, we'll be able to explore more neutral maps. The inconveniences players face as a neutral race will become insignificant. Honestly, it isn't really necessary to join Zero Wing if you want to become a giant. All of the powers in God's domain, aside from those in Starmoon Kingdom, have begun to look into the conversion process due to the performance of Zero Wing's giant players. They all hope to amass their own force of giant experts. It is only a matter of time before someone reveals the conditions for becoming a giant. Once they do, even independent players like us will have an opportunity to convert. The independent players on the streets talked about the battle in the Witch's Hill passionately. Their eyes glowed as they discussed Zero Wing's giant players, and many of them wanted to convert. At this point, both independent players and the various powers were eager to become giant players. The era of the giants had officially begun. Seeing this, Shifeng merely smiled as he continued toward the candlelight trading firm. While the giant race was impressively powerful, it also had glaring flaws. These flaws included promotion difficulty. Without a guild support, even expert players would struggle to reach Tier 3. Shifeng had only chosen to convert 1,000 shield warriors and berserkers into giants due to Zero Wing's precarious position. Normally, he would have only converted players after ensuring that they understood the implications of the process. Of course, these giant players could return to their human state at the cost of a few levels. If they struggled with their Tier 3 promotion quests, they could simply convert back. A few lost levels wouldn't be a problem compared to gaining the giant race's advantages while they were still at Tier 2. Moreover, he could determine the truly talented players among the group by converting them into giants. Before converting, no one would know whether or not they'd be suitable for the race. Once he discovered these talented players, he could grant them the Titan Bloodline, reducing their promotion difficulty and allowing them to shine as true giant experts. As for the various large guilds' search into the giant conversion, both Aqua Rose and Youlan had expressed some concerns on the matter. However, Shifeng paid it no mind. It was only a matter of time before the public discovered Thunder Axe City, and he had already activated the teleportation array that led to it. Moreover, players would need some time to complete the conversion quest. If they used the normal method of becoming a giant. Meanwhile, Zero Wing would reap all of the possible benefits from the giant race. It wasn't long before Shifeng reached his destination. When he arrived at the candlelight trading firm, he found that Melancholic Smile had already prepared the necessary manpower and materials to begin the Guardian Puppets production. Zero Wing urgently needed capable combatants, so it should work on increasing its members' levels and the number of giant players in its employ, but in Shifeng's opinion, producing the Guardian Puppets was more meaningful. In the past, war weapons like the combat puppets were a large part of the reason that the various second- and third-rate guilds had survived the presence of first-rate guilds and superpowers. Sin Realm's decision to use the steel puppet against him had been foolish. Combat puppets weren't meant to kill individual players. They were only truly valuable when they defended or attacked towns and cities. Had Sin Realm utilized its steel puppet to protect Golden Flow Town, capturing the town would have been far more challenging. If Sin Realm had used enough combat puppets, Shifeng would have been forced to rely on more than just his giant players. Likewise, if he crafted a certain number of Guardian Puppets, the various superpowers wouldn't be able to threaten Zero Wing. Inside his spacious special forging room, a small mountain of materials sat atop his work desk. These materials would only be enough to produce one power source for the guardian puppet. Let's begin. Shifeng took in a deep breath as he examined the design and materials before him. He then activated the Soul Fires and Philosopher's Hands abilities, quickly melting down the fine Titan ingots and mana stones on the table. The most difficult part of constructing the guardian puppet was its power source. To attempt the production, one had to be an intermediate master forger at the very least. Moreover, an intermediate master would have a painfully low success rate. Fortunately, the Philosopher's Hands ability could upgrade Shifeng to Advanced Master Forger for a short time. This was why Shifeng dared to attempt producing the guardian puppet. Time passed quickly. Before he had realized it, half a day had passed since Shifeng had begun to work on the guardian puppet. Dark Knight Empire, Silver Pine City. Silver Pine City was the 7th largest NPC city in the Dark Knight Empire and fully under the Hundred Flowers Palace's jurisdiction. However, players from other large guilds roamed the city as if they owned the place. It did not look like the Hundred Flowers Palace's territory. Meanwhile, the normally lively Hundred Flowers Palace residence was as quiet as the grave. The palace's members watched one guild upper echelon after another enter the guild hall's first-floor hall, shock gripping their hearts when they saw the upper echelons' faces. Some of these upper echelons had come from other kingdoms and empires, and even the rarely seen guild elders made an appearance. What's going on? Why are all of the guild's upper echelons gathering here? Isn't that Crimson Heart, the first vice guild leader? Wasn't she managing the branch guild in the Holy Hill Kingdom? She's actually made a trip here? The Hundred Flowers Palace's members went into an uproar when they saw the silver-armored, soldierly woman with crimson eyes. Although Crimson Heart was the guild's first vice-guild leader, she disagreed with the guild leader's management choices and had led a group of players to develop in the Holy Hill Kingdom. Her endeavors in the kingdom had been quite successful, and she paid no heed to the main branch's matters. Even when the palace's main branch had fallen into a precarious state, she had refused to make an appearance. The guild's members had never expected Crimson Heart to visit the main branch at this time. When the crowd saw the 3 players following Crimson Heart, they couldn't help but gape. The highest leveled player among them had reached level 61. Chapter 2031, Strong Team. Inside the grand, solemn meeting room, the Hundred Flowers Palace's upper echelons and guild elders were silent as they stared at Zero Wings players standing behind Cleansed Rue. How is this possible? Level 62. How does Zero Wing have so many level 61 experts and above? Are these people really from Zero Wing? I thought the players Fire Dance and Cola were Zero Wing's peak experts. The Hundred Flowers Palace's members whispered to each other as they examined Silent Blade and the dozen or so Zero Wing members from afar, confusion filling their gazes. Although many of the players in the meeting room had reached level 60, a massive amount of EXP was necessary to rise from level 60 to 61. Currently, fewer than 30 people in the Dark Knight Empire had reached level 61, and even if they included the experts that chose to hide their levels, there were still less than 50 level 61 players in the Empire. Moreover, most of these players were from the 3 superpowers in the Dark Knight Empire. Yet, the 14 representatives from Zero Wing could make up 1/3 of the Empire's highest leveled players. Furthermore, 10 of them were level 62. If these Zero Wing members migrated to the Dark Knight Empire, they would instantly monopolize the top 10 positions on the Empire's ranking list. Although a player's level was not proof of strength, the equipment these players wore was at least on par with the equipment the 3 players who accompanied Crimson Heart wore. When these 14 Zero Wing members stood together, their combined aura was significantly stronger than the combined aura of Crimson Heart's 3 subordinates. Even the guild upper echelons felt greatly pressured by this aura, not to mention the guild members outside of the meeting room. It was no wonder why there had been such a commotion beyond the meeting room's doors. So, this is Zero Wing? It is even more powerful than the rumors claim. A hint of surprise flashed across the male berserker's face as he looked at Silent Blade, Stubborn Bone, and the others. He was particularly surprised to see the young man leading Zero Wing's members. Despite having used an advanced identification skill, he couldn't learn any details about him. The only thing he discovered was the young man's name, Yifeng. It seems that Zero Wing isn't all talk. No wonder it dares to meddle in our guild's affairs, Crimson Heart commented as she glanced at Shifeng and the others. Unfortunately, they came for nothing. A guild could not become more powerful by relying on a small number of peak experts. Although Zero Wing had sent a shocking number of peak experts, guilds had to rely on the cooperation of a large force of ordinary expert and elite players when safeguarding its territory. The greatsword-carrying berserker nodded in agreement with Crimson Heart's statement. From an outsider's point of view, the 100 Flowers Palace had fallen from its peak. However, that wasn't entirely true. At most, the guild had 2/3 of its previous power. Moreover, that didn't include the forces Crimson Heart had been nurturing in the Holy Hill Kingdom. Her forces alone made up 1/3 of the palace's previous strength. Now that Crimson Heart had returned to the main branch, the guild had, in a way, recovered to its peak. With such strength, the guild would have no problem fending off Starlink's offensive. Starlink's main target, after all, was unyielding soul. After a brief discussion among the 100 Flowers Palace's upper echelons, the guild leader, Shadow Flower, finally arrived, marking the meeting's official start. So, she's Shadow Flower? Shifeng was a little taken aback when he saw the masked woman sitting in the guild leader's throne. The 100 Flowers Palace was one of the few guilds in the virtual gaming world that favored women over men. As the upper echelons discussed Crimson Heart's view and agreed with her suggestion, a system notification rang in their ears. Guild system, Starlink has captured East Valley Town's town order. East Valley Town is no longer under the 100 Flowers Palace's jurisdiction. Guild popularity reduced by 2,000. Chapter 2032, Proof of Ability. When they heard the guild system notification, the meeting room fell silent as if time had frozen. The 100 Flowers Palace's upper echelons only recovered from their daze after 3 seconds had passed. East Valley Town has been captured? How is that possible? What did Starlink do? Quick! Send someone to contact our people in East Valley Town. I want to know what's happening. Find out how Starlink captured it. The upper echelons barked out orders to their subordinates, demanding a full investigation into this matter. They were all visibly anxious, having abandoned their prior calm. Even Cleansed Rue, one of the guild's vice-guild leaders, was clearly flustered. East Valley Town was one of the 100 Flowers Palace's 3 most important towns due to its proximity to the Thorny Ridge, a level 60 to 80 neutral map. The Thorny Ridge was the most suitable map for players to grind and level up. Not only could players level up quickly there, but they could also secure excellent resources from the map. Furthermore, East Valley Town had almost been large enough to promote to intermediate rank. Due to East Valley Town's importance, the 100 Flowers Palace had stationed between 30,000 and 40,000 players in the town. Although only 1,000 of them were expert players, the rest being elites, East Valley Town shouldn't be easy to capture. To prevent other powers from taking the town from them, the guild had also constructed 8 defense turrets and 10 arrow towers, in addition to hiring 1,000 NPC soldiers for the town's protection. If worse came to worst, the palace had a collection of war weapons, Tier 3 summoning scrolls, and Tier 3 large-scale destruction magic scrolls stored in the town. Yet, despite having such defenses, East Valley Town had fallen without any of them receiving word of an attack. Why wouldn't they worry when such a heavily fortified town had been captured so easily? After waiting for a short while, the 100 Flowers Palace's upper echelons received reports from their subordinates. However, their expressions became even gloomier after reading the reports. Vice Guild Leader Rue, what happened in East Valley Town? Shifeng could not help but ask. We have received a report from the members stationed in the town. Starlink sealed off communication in the town before several thousand Tier 2 experts appeared in our residence. Because of how sudden the attack was, our members were caught completely off guard. Using the confusion to their advantage, Starlink's members claimed the town order, Cleansed Rue said, turning to Sherfone with a complex expression. Starlink had used the same tactical assault that Zero Wing had employed against the Starlight Alliance. It was highly likely that Starlink had only decided to use the tactic after witnessing Zero Wing's success. If Zero Wing had not used it, Starlink would likely have failed to capture such a fortified town as East Valley Town. Although this situation impressed upon the palace's upper echelons how truly impressive Zero Wing was, it was also a fact that Zero Wing had indirectly helped Starlink capture one of the palace's fortified towns. This would likely encourage these upper echelons' resentment against Zero Wing. They used our guild's assault tactic? Remnant Cloud and the others, who sat around Sherfone, were stunned. Although they felt as if the Hundred Flowers Palace deserved their apology, they were also a little delighted. The Hundred Flowers Palace's upper echelons had already stated that they were capable of fending off a superpower in the same way Zero Wing had. However, due to Zero Wing's tactic, the palace had lost one of its most important towns. However, the situation didn't particularly surprise Sherfone. After an adventurer team had used the tactic to destroy a guild town in the past, similar situations had occurred across God's domain. No one could resist the temptation of obtaining a guild town so easily. But using this tactic required one to fulfill certain conditions. The first condition required one to possess sufficiently strong combatants. The second condition involved the ability to transfer a large number of players across long distances. Naturally, the second condition was more difficult to fulfill since the majority of teleportation tools in the game only allowed individual travel. Group teleportation tools, even those that allowed short-distance travel, were extremely rare and valuable, not to mention long-distance, group teleportation tools. Normally, one would require tools like Tier 3 group teleportation scrolls to achieve the feat, but such scrolls were insanely rare, rivaling Tier 4 magic scrolls. They were not easy to come by. This was also why Sherfone treated his 7 Luminaries ring as a divine tool. Its ability to teleport a group of players was already immensely precious, not to mention its other abilities. However, that isn't the most important news right now. Based on the information we gathered during our people's investigations, Starlink simultaneous dispatched an army to Moon Creek Town, one of our other important bases, Cleansed Rue said. We estimate that the guild has mobilized over 300,000 players for the assault, and it has sealed off communication and all paths to the town. We were only able to learn of its movements through offline means. It was obvious that Starlink was serious about taking Moon Creek Town from the Hundred Flowers Palace. An army of 300,000 elite players was the equivalent of 3/4 of the palace's elite members. With all paths to and from Moon Creek Town blocked, teleportation to the town was impossible, as well. It would take a very long time for the palace to mobilize a force large enough to match Starlink's army. Meanwhile, only around 30,000 players defended the town. By the time the palace's main army arrived, the guild would have likely lost Moon Creek Town. If the Hundred Flowers Palace lost Moon Creek Town as well, the guild would lose all hope of developing in the Dark Knight Empire. The various large guilds relied on their guild towns, which were usually constructed in high-resource maps, to obtain leveling resources and funds. Without any guild towns, a guild would stagnate. Guild leader, what should we do? It'll likely take an hour or two to gather 100,000 elite members right now, and we'll need another 4 or 5 hours to reach Moon Creek Town. With Moon Creek Town's defenses, I'm afraid it won't last that long. Don't forget, Starlink has set up blockades on the paths to Moon Creek Town. Getting through those blockades will likely take as much time as actually traveling to the town. How are we supposed to send reinforcements, in that case? We've already lost East Valley Town. If we lose Moon Creek Town as well, we'll have no choice but to leave the Empire. All of the palace's upper echelons anxiously voiced their opinions, one after another. They had never expected Starlink to launch such a fierce offensive. Rather than facing their guild in the field, Starlink had directly assaulted their guild's vital points. All we can do is organize a small force of experts to break through Starlink's blockades. I have blood source potions with me. If we can get these potions to Moon Creek Town, we can fortify the town's defenses. We should be able to buy enough time for the main army to arrive, Crimson Heart declared. Currently, there are 2 paths that will allow us to reach the town quickly, but trying to break through a single front will be quite dangerous since both paths are relatively close to each other. The Starlink members stationed at the blockades will easily be able to provide each other reinforcements. Hence, I suggest that we try both paths. We'll use one force as bait while the other tries to deliver the blood source potions to Moon Creek Town. Rue, you insisted that we ally with Zero Wing, correct? Then, let's see Zero Wing's strength. If Zero Wing can't even help us with this operation, then the guild isn't strong enough to stop Starlink. This. Cleansed Rue couldn't help but turn to Sherfone with an awkward expression. She had merely invited Zero Wing's experts to this meeting to show off its strength to her guild's upper echelons. Meanwhile, Starlink's vice guild leaders had either been guild leaders of first-rate guilds or commanders of top adventurer teams. They were all famous experts that had shaken the virtual gaming world in the past. Not only were these players incredibly strong as individuals, but they also had a large number of capable experts under their command. Otherwise, they wouldn't have qualified for the positions as Starlink's vice guild leaders. Since Starlink had sent 2 of its vice guild leaders to guard the 2 closest paths, breaking through would be even more difficult. Crimson Heart couldn't help her frown. Although she had expected Starlink to establish a tight blockade, she hadn't expected this much trouble. She then asked, "Do you know who the vice guild leaders are?" After taking a deep breath, the assassin replied in a soft, serious tone, "Starlink's 7th vice guild leader, Desert Tiger, is guarding the path we're on now. He has earned the title, 100-Fist Tiger. The other path is guarded by Starlink's recently promoted 4th vice guild leader, 3 Kills. 3 Kills? He actually joined Starlink? How did Starlink manage to recruit him? I thought he decided to retire a long time ago." Crimson Heart's expression darkened when she heard the name 3 Kills. Ordinary players might not know the name, but as an upper echelon of a first-rate guild, Crimson Heart was quite familiar with 3 Kills. The name had once shaken the virtual gaming world's apex over a dozen years ago. 3 Kills had been the guild leader of the super guild, Jormungandr. He had been one of the only geniuses that appeared in the guild once a decade. However, for some unknown reason, 3 Kills had announced his retirement one day, leaving the virtual gaming world alongside a large group of experts. Less than 5 years later, Jormungandr had disbanded and faded from the virtual gaming world, and other super guilds and super first-rate guilds had poached its abandoned members. However, when 3 Kills had led the guild, Jormungandr had nearly become one of the top 4 super guilds in the virtual gaming world. We don't know the exact reason, but we're certain that this player is the real 3 Kills, the female assassin said, shuddering. Ordinary players would assume that a super guild's guild leader only played a management role in the guild, but Crimson Heart, a first-rate guild's upper echelon, knew that the position was proof of one's strength in super guilds. With a big shot like 3 Kills defending the blockade, why wouldn't she shudder in fear? "Hopefully, Zero Wing can buy us some time," Crimson Heart said as she examined the map. "Let's increase our speed. We need to break through the blockade before Zero Wing clashes with 3 Kills." She had planned to show off the 100 Flowers Palace's strength to Zero Wing in this operation, proving that the palace was no weaker than Zero Wing, perhaps even stronger. Once Zero Wing realized its inferior position, it would give up on trying to lay claim to the palace's shops and lands. However, she had lost her previous certainty. Even a super first-rate guild would likely struggle to get past a blockade led by 3 Kills, not to mention Zero Wing. Right now, she needed to put as much distance between her team and 3 Kills as possible before he annihilated Zero Wing's small force. If she had to fight both Desert Tiger and 3 Kills at once, she'd never reach Moon Creek Town. Following which, Crimson Heart and the Dark Cloud Legion members increased their pace to reach Starlink's blockade before the agreed-upon time. Meanwhile, on another path through the Silent Canyon, Cleansed Rue's group had arrived a short distance away from Starlink's blockade. "Elder Yifeng, the situation has changed. I've just received a report stating that 3 kills is leading the force ahead. He was the guild leader of Jormungandr, a super guild from several years ago. Cleansed Rue reported grimly. Breaking past them is no longer possible here. However, I'm hoping that you can help me delay 3 kills for some time. If we can hold him off for 4 or 5 minutes, it will be enough. I see. I understand, but since we've agreed to prove Zero Wing's ability to resist Starlink to the 100 Flowers Palace, we cannot go back on our word.